and rioting. I am sure the thoughts of the whole House are with us and his family and friends. Order, order. We start with questions. Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, Dr Danny Chambers.
Number one, Mr Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Can I associate myself with his comments about Lord Hattersley? And then the honourable gentleman, I would first of all gently remind him that Liberal Democrats had many years in government with the Conservatives where they chose austerity, which has of course speeded up the decline of our high streets. But this government is committed to rejuvenating our high streets. Later this year we'll introduce a comprehensive high street strategy backed up by £300 million of support to transform high streets most in need, and the funding will be used to support the creation of a high street innovation partnerships to reimagine and revive the country's most struggling high streets.
Dr Danny Chambers.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It is Independent Bookshop Week, and we are fortunate to have some fantastic independent bookshops in Winchester, including PG Wells, which I recently visited, potentially the longest running bookshop in the country, continuously running over 300 years. Jane Austen and John Keble used them. It's not only important for our local economy and our high street, but it's also an important part of historical culture and also a real sort of community hub. What is the Minister doing to ensure that these independent bookshops that provide so much to communities are coping with energy costs and business rates?
Secretary of State.
Well, first of all, speaking as a former publisher myself, I'm very committed indeed to the success of bookshops, and I'd like to congratulate the bookshop in his constituency on their many, many years of service to the public. Of course, this government is bringing in long overdue reform to rebalance the business rate system, which should, of course, support them. We're bringing in certainty by replacing a temporary relief with permanently lower taxes. And, of course, we're looking to support both independent shops of the kind that he's talking about, because that's the kind of business that gives a high street identity and that local residents like.
Gives me pleasure in saying Dame Jessica Morden.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Two-thirds of businesses in Newport City Centre are independent businesses, and it's been brilliant over recent weeks to see businesses like Kingsway Market, Scallop and Bank open in recent weeks. However, this is undermined by shops selling illegal cigarettes, illegal vapes and counterfeit goods. So what more can ministers do, working with Home Office colleagues, to help trade-in standards, who in Newport, I have to say, do an excellent job and shut 2 shops last week, help them to tackle this issue when shops open up again after being shut?
Can I congratulate her on her very well-deserved recognition, but of course she raises an extremely important issue, which I'm sure is of concern to members' rights across the House, and that's why it will be welcomed on all sides that the Home Office has announced a high street organised crime unit to tackle organised crime where it is operating through high street shops and bringing down the high streets that residents want to see returned to vibrancy as places that symbolise the life and the heart of the communities they're part of.
Rishi Sunak.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I know the Secretary of State will agree with me that access to cash and banking services is an important part of vibrant high streets, particularly in market towns in North Yorkshire like Stokesley. So will he join me in thanking Link for agreeing to representations from me and the local community to install a banking hub after the closure of the last bank branch in Stokesley? It will make an enormous difference to the local community. I know this is something that he is passionate about too, and we're all delighted to have this coming to Stokesley.
Yeah, well, I absolutely congratulate him for the work he's done in his constituency on this, and of course those residents who have been advocating for it, because many, particularly smaller businesses and many older people who prefer not to access banking services digitally need a physical bank where they can go into, hand in the money that they're making or take money out. So we need banking hubs, and I congratulate him on the work that he's led.
Orin Moon.
Whereas, Mr Speaker, Cornish towns such as St Austell and Redruth desperately need support for their high streets, but pride in place criteria such as community cohesion and green spaces, it's virtually impossible to be in Cornwall and not close to green spaces, count against such towns. As the criteria are now starting to be used across department, would the Secretary of State meet with me to discuss how these criteria are currently counting against areas such as Cornwall?
Secretary of State.
Well, I'm always happy to meet with the honourable gentleman, my honourable friend, and indeed we regularly meet as it is, so I'm happy to continue doing that. But we want to see high streets everywhere succeed. Pride in Place is a very highly targeted programme, but we need to make an offer for high streets absolutely everywhere. So I'm sure he will welcome, as I do, the high street rental auctions programme we're bringing in, backed up by government funding to support communities to buy and use empty units so they could be put to purposes the community wants to see, rather than lying empty as a blight on high streets.
David Simmons, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government came to office promising to support our high streets with a permanently lower regime of business rates. But the answers to written questions from the department indicate that the government expects a 22% rise in the business rate take over this Parliament. So can he tell the House, does he think that the 100,000 job losses in hospitality since the government took office, or the 74,000 job losses in retail since the government took office, have been impacted by the rise in business rates, or is it solely down to the Chancellor's massive hike in national insurance?
So stay.
Well, he will be aware, as I am, that high streets went into steep decline under the previous Conservative government. It's this Labour government that is having to support those businesses and communities that want to fix them. So we are carrying out long overdue reform to rebalance the business rate system, and we have replaced the temporary relief that they offered with permanently lower tax rates that will support high streets to succeed into the future. And of course, as I said to my honourable friend earlier on, the High Streets Rental Auctions Scheme, including government funding, will support communities to bring back empty units into use so they can be valuable places communities can gather to meet, bringing footfall and therefore life back to our high streets.
Michelle Welch.
Question number 2, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I'll take questions 2 and 15 together. The government continues to implement those leasehold reforms that are already in statute and to progress the wider set of reforms necessary to end the feudal leasehold system for good. In respect of the latter, the King's Speech confirmed our intention to introduce the substantive Common Hold and Leasehold Reform Bill, and to include in that bill fixes to the small number of specific but serious flaws in the previous government's Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act.
Michelle Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've met with residents of the Hucknall Colliery development in my constituency who have been left frustrated by high estate management charges, a lack of transparency and the appalling performance of managing agent Firstport. Many cannot understand their bills, how their bills are calculated, some are paying different amounts for similar properties, and many were led to believe roads and public spaces would be adopted, only to find themselves facing ever-increasing charges. They have been misled and they have been ignored. Does the Minister agree that home owners should not be trapped in these so-called leasehold arrangements? And will he set out what action the government will take to ensure managing agents such as Firstport are properly regulated, transparent and accountable to the residents who are ultimately funding them, because my residents continue to be treated with contempt?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for her question and for her advocacy on this issue. Mr. Speaker, homeowners shouldn't be subject to unfair management charges or poor standards of service at the hands of managing agents, and I commend her for bringing this case to the House's attention. Our recent consultation on enhanced protections for homeowners on freehold estates closed on the 12th of March, and we are analysing the feedback received alongside continuing to develop plans to strengthen regulation of managing agents.
Justin Mathers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for coming to speak to the All-Party Group on leasehold reform and setting out so comprehensively his vision for ending leasehold for good. There are many things that he's explained need to be done to get us to that place, including fixing some of the flaws in the 2024 Act, which will enable enfranchisement to proceed. Now, there is a great deal of interest in this particular issue, and I wondered if he could set out when we will see the long-awaited consultation on valuation rates for enfranchisement.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend has considerable expertise when it comes to leasehold reform, and he's right to press for clarity in respect of this important matter. To commence the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act's enfranchisement provisions, we unfortunately do need to fix the flaws he refers to through new primary legislation, and we'll do so in this session. In the interim, we will need to establish what capitalisation and deferment rates to set, and I'm pleased to tell him that I am aiming to launch a consultation on these in the coming weeks.
Helen Morgan.
Very much, Mr Speaker. A couple of weeks ago at my constituency surgery, I met my first victim of First Port. He and his wife live in a sheltered accommodation flat on the 3rd floor, and the lift has been out of use for months. They're paying exorbitant management fees, and recently his wife had to negotiate three flights of stairs to get to an appointment while on bottled oxygen. This isn't just a rip-off, this is an accident waiting to happen. Will the Minister meet with me and other concerned MPs to sort out what we do about First Port?
Mr Speaker, as you'll recall, this is not the first time I've had to mention First Port of the dispatch box. We need to drive up standards across all managing agents. I'm more than happy to meet with the Honourable Lady and a group of other MPs, as she suggests, to discuss this particular provider in more detail.
Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Shortly after becoming the MP for Mid-Dorset North Pool, I was contacted by Jeremy in Wimborne. He and his wife live in a leasehold flat where in 2023 all the funds from the management company were fraudulently stolen. I've since been working with the FSA but told that this sort of thing is not covered and they have no route to redress by the Financial Services Compensation Scheme. And while I welcome the draft reform bill, will he commit to developing legislation to work with the Treasury to bring property management companies into scope?
Minister.
As the Honourable Lady is hopefully aware, the previous government asked Lord Best to chair a working group to look at the regulation of property agents in the round. We're giving very careful consideration to those recommendations in that report with a view to strengthening managing agents. If she wants to write to me with some more details about the specific case in question, I'll look into it.
Chair of the Select Committee, Florence Session-Loman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Minister for allowing my Select Committee to have a really good look at the legislation before it was laid before the House and the opportunity to scrutinise that, and I thank my committee colleagues and our specialist clerk, Jack Edwards. I was pleased to see a report in the Times where the government is maybe willing to accept our recommendation around the implementation of £250 on ground rent by as late as 2027. Can the Minister confirm that this is the case? I also wanted to know if the Minister will be able to update the House on when that legislation will finally be laid. Many leaseholders, you can see from colleagues right across the chamber, this continues to be a pressing issue. People continue to be ripped off. So the earlier we get that legislation laid, the quicker we can bring this leasehold nightmare to an end.
Mr Speaker, can I commend my honourable friend for her work, the members of her committee and officials, everyone on the Select Committee, for the thorough piece of work they've done scrutinising the draft bill. It will make for a better bill coming forward. She'll forgive me if I won't comment on press speculation, other than to add to what I said and to build on what I set out in my letter to her of the 8th of June, which is that the committee and the government are of one mind when it comes to the necessity of progressing the substantive bill as quickly as possible so that we can transform the lives of leaseholders. And while I remain committed to ensuring that any bill that comes forward is robust so that we don't have to fix problems in primary legislation such as we've had to do with the 2024 Act, I am seized by the urgency of bringing both the bill and commencing the ground rent provisions as quickly as we possibly can.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I very much welcome the measures introduced in England and Wales through the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act 2024 to improve the transparency of service charges. Unfortunately, in Northern Ireland, Mr Speaker, leaseholders have limited control over service charges imposed upon them. Under current legislation, leaseholders have limited means to challenge the underlying justification for these charges. So my request to the Minister, he's always a very good Minister, he always gives me a very, very good response. I'm going to look for one today as well. Will the Minister liaise with his colleagues in Northern Ireland to support the introduction of similar protections in Northern Ireland as they have here to ensure leaseholders there are not left exposed to unjustified charges? Thank you so much.
The honourable gentleman is as charming as ever. All I can say to him, as I say in respect of this and many other issues, is I am more than happy to help counterparts in Northern Ireland learn from the very good work this government is doing when it comes to leasehold reform.
Can I welcome you to the front bench? Lewis Cocking, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm a leaseholder like millions of people across the country, and we have been waiting nearly 2 years since the government promised to improve the system. While the government divers, leaseholders are getting ripped off with higher service charges from companies like First Port. We need action, not words, to take on these bad companies. Every MP from across this House is aware of the situation. So can the Minister tell me why the Leasehold Bill does nothing to hold management companies to account?
Minister.
Mr Speaker, I've said to the honourable gentleman on previous occasions I have a lot of respect for him, but he's got some front standing up and accusing this government of dithering when it comes to leasehold reform. The party opposite had 14 years to end the system. They didn't do it. They raised expectations in the process and let leaseholders down. We are going to end the system within a parliament. We're going to strengthen the regulation of managing agents. We'll respond to the Select Committee and set out further details in the near future.
Duncan Jordan.
Question number 3, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend will be aware that response standards and resource decisions are set locally by fire and rescue authorities who understand their risks and communities best. We will continue working with Dorset and Wiltshire Fire and Rescue Service to support delivery of improved services for Poole through national reform, stable funding and stronger coordination.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And my honourable friend will know that the Dorset and Wiltshire Fire and Rescue Authority has received an 11.8% increase in core spending power. But despite this, there are plans to merge Hamworthy Station with the one in Poole. Not only will this increase response times, but it fails to take account of specific challenges in the area, such as flooding, heathland fires and seasonal increases in traffic. So will the Minister therefore consider what more can be done to keep Hamworthy Fire Station open?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recognise the very real concerns my honourable friend raises, including heathland fires, flooding and seasonal traffic. The variable nature of these risks is exactly why these judgments must be informed by local fire and rescue authorities using local risk and operational evidence. As he set out, Dorset and Wiltshire has seen an 11.8% increase in core spending power, giving local services a stronger foundation. The government is committed to wider reform to improve outcomes for the public, but it is not for central government to intervene in local operational decisions.
Becky Cooper.
Question 4, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, the Government recently consulted on a new national planning policy framework. That consultation included proposals designed to promote healthy communities. We're currently analysing the extensive feedback received and will publish our response in due course.
Dr. Becky Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Health inequalities are driven by social determinants such as access to green spaces, which is directly associated with higher life expectancies. In my constituency of Worthing West, we have the lowest amount of green space per person in the country, less than a snooker table. Could the Minister therefore set out how the Department is working across government to ensure that this essential health determinant is being secured and increased across all areas of our country?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for her question. I'm in full agreement with her with regard to the importance of local green spaces. Such spaces are vital community assets which provide significant benefits not only for physical and mental health, but also to mitigate growing challenges such as the urban heat island effect. While I cannot speak for all other government departments, the new NPPF recognises the importance of safeguarding local green space and would ensure, for example, that such spaces are excluded from the definition of grey belt land.
Kim Walter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In terms of adding things to the NPPF and the importance of green spaces, can I also urge him to consider adding greater protections for our national landscapes? There have been two, frankly, outrageous decisions by the planning inspector in my constituency in the last month. One, a car park north of Whitchurch, and one, a large solar farm just above St Marybourne towards Andover, both within the national landscape, which run the risk of setting a precedent for large-scale industrial development in our once lost, gone forever, beautiful parts of the country. So if we can persuade him, can he add that strengthening? If not, can I please bring the National Landscapes Association to meet him to discuss the problems that we're facing?
Minister.
I thank the right honourable gentleman for his question. If he wouldn't mind, in the first instance, sending me details of the two cases in question, I'm more than happy to sit down and have a conversation with him about how he thinks that those decisions interact with the proposals set out in the recent consultation.
Will Foster.
Question 5, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the plan-led approach is and must remain the cornerstone of our planning system. We've been very clear that we expect all local planning authorities to make every possible effort to get up-to-date local plans in place as soon as possible. To support LPAs seeking to protect their communities from piecemeal and speculative development by getting up-to-date plans in place, we distributed £19.8 million following the publication of the revised NPPF in December 2024 and recently supplemented that funding with a further £15.7 million through our Local Plan Implementation Fund to support nearly 200 local planning authorities progress plan development.
Will Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My local authority, Woking Borough Council, is doing exactly as the Minister asks. It is creating a local plan, and that is where our democratically elected councillors, our local people, decide where we build the homes that they need to go. Can the Minister confirm to me if there's any point in this council pursuing a local plan, or other local authorities pursuing local plans, if its planning reforms are going to render it toothless?
Minister.
Well, I'm afraid I refute the assertion that he makes in terms of what the MPPF will do to local plans. We do need local plans in place. The plan-led system is, as I said, the cornerstone of the system. The MPPF kicks in certain instances where authorities don't have an up-to-date local plan in place. That's the case for far too many. I'm very pleased that his local authority has taken the steps necessary to get one in place as soon as possible.
Peter Plimsoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So in Suffolk, we have many villages that need new affordable houses. So what can be done to make the rural exception sites more attractive to developers?
Minister.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question. It's a really important point. We've spoken before about the importance of rural exception sites and what more can be done. In the MPPF consultation that I've just referenced, we set out proposals to strengthen rural exception site policy. As I said, we're analysing the feedback received before we can set out next steps.
Tom Gordon.
Question 6, Mr. Speaker.
Zero State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government expects all developers to build high-quality homes delivered in line with their planning consent and to treat customers fairly. The government's actively considering mandatory standards of warranties for all new build homes, and we are committed to introducing a statutory new homes ombudsman to improve redress when things go wrong.
Tom Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Constituents of mine living on the Kingsley Farm development have spent months chasing the developer's Stonebridge Homes to finish elements of the estate which were agreed and outlined in the planning permission when it was granted. Residents of the Willows now find themselves in the exact same situation with the same developer too. This is not just an issue in North Yorkshire, but one across this country. And my mum, a councillor in the neighbouring local authority, has also outlined issues in her patch too, both in Nottingley and also in Normanton, where developers are clearly taking residents and customers for a ride. So what steps is the Secretary of State taking to give local authorities the additional powers they need and to ensure that they use them?
Secretary of State.
Well, I thank him for his question, and I'm sure many colleagues across the House will recognise the kind of situation that he's referring to there. And of course, one of the reasons why building control in local authorities became so weak is so many of them were underfunded for so long. Following the Fair Funding Review, councils now have funding in line with levels of deprivation, so local authorities have additional resources to beef up their building control functions and take action against the kind of organisations that he is referring to. Longer term, of course, we're bringing in a new Homes Ombudsman, which will be a better way and a fast way for people to seek redress in those circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Little Stannion in my constituency is a brilliant community with lots of first-time buyers who moved there to put down roots. However, they've been let down time and time again. The developers went into administration, and a management agency who is connected to developer continue to ask for more money with no transparency for how it's spent. When the roads fall apart, they have no one to turn to. When a community centre still looks like a building site, they get no update. When the play equipment starts to break, Little Stannion Farm management become hostile. So can the Minister outline what more we can do for new build areas like Little Stannion so they don't keep getting let down?
Well, absolutely. Incredibly important issues that she's referring to, and incredibly difficult for people who are buying their first home to find themselves in those kind of circumstances. Now, she will have heard my honourable friend, the Minister for Housing, referring earlier on to changes in to leasehold, including a consultation which is due to end within weeks that will allow for far greater transparency over charges for leaseholders for the first time. We've also, of course, changed the regulations under the National Planning Policy framework, which will change the way that some of those problems that she's mentioned can be dealt with, and the new Homes Ombudsman, when that comes online, will give a new form of redress much faster for her constituents in those circumstances.
Most Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What many people see as the government's developer-led planning approach is draining trust amongst local communities in the planning system. Now, the new National Planning Policy Framework proposes the most centralising changes in planning in my lifetime. It will mandate granting permissions under wider than ever presumptions in favour, which for the first time will overrule local plans, and with no statutory protection available to them, even the most precious green spaces, and not just national landscapes, not just lands around railway stations, and the nature they support are under threat, including land at Wellington Monument in my constituency. So, as the National Trust launches its Nature Equals Future campaign, will the government allow this House to debate and vote on the proposed new National Planning Policy Framework, one which signifies, according to the Town and Country Planning Association, an unprecedentedly permissive regime?
Well, I'm very disappointed to hear the Lib Dem spokesperson arguing the case for NIMBYs, because in other circumstances, I've heard Liberal Democrats stand up recognising we have a housing crisis in this country, recognising that the number of families stuck in temporary accommodation doubled under the previous government, recognising that the number of people left sleeping rough on our streets doubled under the previous government, and young people can't find anywhere they can afford to rent or to buy. Now, we fixed that by getting a fair balance between the rights of people who need a home to buy and the rights of local people over their local area. The new local plan proposals give local people the framework within which they can express their views, but we have to speed up the slowest planning system in the Western world if we want to get people the homes they deserve and have a right to live in.
Warren Edwards.
Speaker.
Come on, Ken.
Speaker, the government will, the people will have heard the Secretary of State referring to people wanting to protect the most precious green spaces as NIMBYs. They're not NIMBYs, they're trying to protect the most important nature in our country. If the government won't allow a debate on the MPPF in relation to green spaces, will it allow a debate on the MPPF in relation to the expected 430,000 mortgage prisoners that UK CIF have identified from houses that will be at risk of flooding under new MPPF policies? And if it won't allow a debate, will the government meet with the Association of British Insurers, who want to discuss their objections to the MPPF?
Just to be clear, I wasn't calling people who care about the Greenbelt NIMBYs. I was calling him and his colleagues on the Lib Dem benches NIMBYs. Of course, we have retained protections for the Greenbelt, but we need to get new homes built. And I'm sorry if the Lib Dems want to deprive young people of the chance to find somewhere they can afford to rent, and deprive young people who want somewhere to buy to get that vital first foot on the housing ladder. They used to support aspiration. Now they're slamming the door shut in the faces of young people who want to get on in their lives.
Number 7, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, national planning policy makes clear that planning decisions should minimise potential adverse impacts resulting from noise. Associated planning practice guidance sets out that good acoustic design needs to be considered early in the planning process.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sound certification is the UK's first accreditation for spaces that are audio inclusive and comfortable for neurodivergent people. Spaces like Oscar Acoustics Innovation Centre in my constituency. Will the Minister meet with me to discuss the benefits of incorporating measurable acoustic performance and audio inclusivity standards into building regulations or guidance to support more inclusive spaces?
Minister?
I thank my honourable friend for her question. Building regulations already require protection against sound or reverberation in houses, flats, buildings that have residential rooms and schools, but I'm always open to considering how sound insulation standards might be improved in new builds, and would welcome any further information she might send me about the reference projects in her constituency, including Oscar Acoustics Innovation Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 8, please.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're working closely with the Department of Health and Social Care and NHS England to make sure the Building Safety Regulator aids delivery of critical NHS infrastructure. This includes introducing a dedicated team within the BSR to focus specifically on hospitals, as well as producing targeted guidance for NHS trusts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very grateful to the Minister's Department for their work with me on unblocking a major housing scheme in my constituency. She rightly mentioned challenges with the BSR now and major health facilities. I was pleased to hear what she said, but can I really ask her to work as closely as possible with the Department of Health, because we need to see these new NHS buildings being built just as we need the new homes to be built. Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm sorry to hear about the delays and problems in my honourable friend's constituency, and I want to reassure her we're taking serious action on this particular matter, so I will work closely with the Department for Health and Social Care as well as the BSR to try and improve the situation for her.
Thanks, Mayor.
9, please, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, my department is working closely with the Department for Transport to consider reforms to adoption and highways frameworks. We also recently consulted on reducing the prevalence of private estate management arrangements, including proposals to increase the adoption of estate amenities such as roads on new developments. That consultation closed on the 12th of March and we're analysing the feedback received.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Residents in Fossett Grove have been battling for 10 years to get a piece of land adopted that is strewn with litter. Elsewhere in my constituency, roads are not gritted during the winter months. We've got an area where they can't get a post box in Bidwell West, and where a car crashed into a house, we can't get any speed humps. What can the Minister do to put some pressure on the Council to hurry up?
Minister.
Well, I'm sorry to hear about those, what sounds like particularly egregious cases, and my honourable friend is right to highlight the detrimental consequences of declining road adoption rates. The DfT is reviewing barriers to adoption with a view to identifying improvements and informing future reforms alongside the consultation I referenced. When it comes to individual local authorities, let me put it mildly, some are better than others. We know that. Central Bedfordshire obviously has some ground to make up, but that's one of the issues we're considering as part of the policy development process in respect of that consultation.
John Milne.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In my constituency of Horsham, we have to deal with increasing numbers of unadopted roads, either because the developer wants to leave it with an estate manager, which means an annual charge, or because the road does not meet the construction standard to satisfy the local highways department. Both issues are ripe for exploitation of residents. So will the Minister consider issuing guidance to control these abuses?
We will do better than that, Mr Speaker. We consulted very specifically as part of our consultation on ending the prevalence of these particular arrangements, what more we can do in terms of common adoptable standards and exploring mandatory adoption for certain public amenities in certain circumstances. If the honourable gentleman has read the CMA report into this issue, he will know that the two are absolutely essential. We can't mandate local authorities until we've got common adoptable standards. If that's the route we go down, we have to do them both at the same time.
Question number 10, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, MHCLG ministers engage regularly with ministerial colleagues across government in relation to a range of housing policy matters. We continue to consider what additional powers we might give local authorities to enable them to respond to the pressures created by short-term lets as well as second homes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In my constituency, Whitby is being hollowed out by short-term lets. Bordered by the sea and a national park, house building cannot solve the problem of a lack of affordable housing for residents. We must also release more existing homes for families in the town. Can the Minister commit to ensuring licensing for short-term lets will be legislated for at the earliest opportunity in this Parliament, as registration schemes, whilst welcome, will not be robust enough to tackle the problem?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for her question. Mr Speaker, let me be clear, there is no credible solution to the housing crisis that doesn't involve significantly boosting housing supply. But my honourable friend is absolutely right to argue that the distribution of homes in any given area has a significant bearing on housing availability and affordability. As she knows, the government has already made changes to the tax system to reorientate the housing market away from second home owners and investors and towards local people looking for homes to live in. While I'm afraid I can't commit to future legislation, I can assure her that we continue to consider how best we ensure that local planning authorities have the full set of tools they need to manage challenges of the kind she's described.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Last week I met representatives from 22 town and parish councils, all deeply concerned that new government policies are curtailing their power over planning decisions and also at the lack of truly affordable homes for locals. I understand the government has a house building target, but the housing crisis in South Devon is being exacerbated by the spread of second homes and holiday lets, removing even former council homes from the market and leading to a shortage in rental properties. However, we don't know the true extent of the issue without the short-term let registration scheme. So when will the department introduce the register so we can control short-term holiday lets in our rural and coastal towns?
Yeah.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, my department is not responsible for the National Registration Scheme for Short-Term Lets, that's DCMS. They are committed to implementing it as soon as possible. When it is implemented, it will capture any property used as a short-term rental accommodation, including, and I think this is really important, second homes which operate as short-term lets.
Number
11, please, Mr Speaker.
Mr Speaker, we've introduced the Representation of the People Bill, which will close loopholes that could allow foreign money to enter UK politics and undermine trust. Alongside these measures, we're considering the Rycroft Review's recommendations, including on candidate donations, and we'll set out our full response shortly.
Mr Speaker, what if I told you that just before the general election, a soon-to-be MP had pocketed a £5 million cash gift from a crypto billionaire living halfway across the world? And soon after receiving this lucrative gift, the very same politician had then announced a new policy to slash taxes for the crypto industry. Well, Mr Speaker, you might think that something concerning is going on. So does the Minister agree that no British politician should be for sale to the highest bidder? And will they commit to using the elections bill to slam the door shut on secret cash gifts to senior politicians?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Government is clear that the integrity and transparency of our political system must be protected. The rules we have in place are designed to ensure that political donations are free from legitimate sources and are properly declared. However, we recognise the need to ensure our rules remain effective and address emerging risks. We're already delivering a package of reforms through the Representation of the People Bill, and we'll also consider the recommendations from the Rycroft Review and work with the Electoral Commission and others to make sure the system remains resilient for the future.
Umbrella.
Number 12, please, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, event fees should be fair, transparent and communicated effectively. The Government continues to give careful consideration to the recommendations set out in the Older People's Housing Task Force final report, including in respect of implementing the Law Commission's 2017 recommendations to regulate event fees.
Umbrella.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. A constituent of mine has been unable to wind up his late uncle's estate since 2023. The shared ownership retirement flat managed by Arby in Poundbury is incurring £15,000 in service charges. Even if they do find a buyer, those charges plus the exit fees are effectively going to wipe out any value from the sale. So what steps is the Government taking to tackle excessive service charges and ban exit fees in the retirement housing sector?
Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. I think this is a really important issue. We did consult last year on a package of measures to strengthen leaseholder protections that included around the use of event fees, and we'll be responding to that consultation hopefully in the near future. On resale values more widely, they are influenced by a range of factors, but the Older People's Housing Task Force, which I earlier referenced, commented on resale values and what might be done, a series of recommendations which we are carefully considering.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Unfair terms on retirement village leases are leaving grieving families in Derby trapped, facing huge exit fees, whilst extortionate service charges on the empty property rack up. Will the Minister support these families by addressing the unfair terms that they face when a parent or loved one passes away?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for that question. As I've just made clear, we are looking very carefully at resale values and to the Older People's Housing Task Force recommendations in this area. I wonder if he, as well as the honourable member for West Dorset, might send me some of the examples they've referenced. Any evidence we can get on how this is affecting homeowners across the country and their families would be incredibly useful.
Shadow Minister Lewis Cocking.
Mr Speaker, the Minister should also be considering the impact of the conveyancing process on this important issue. I've had many complaints from older people in my constituency about the lack of transparency from solicitors. Then families are hit with huge fees at the worst possible time. If people knew what they were signing up for, I'm sure that lots of these properties would never be solved. Would the Minister commit to going further than the Older Persons Housing Task Force report and look closely at the entire conveyancing process?
Mr Speaker, remiss of me forgot to welcome the honourable gentleman to his place, which I do. He's diligently pursued the issue of conveyancing and buying and selling over many months, not least in his role in the Select Committee. I can't go further at this dispatch box than the fact that we are carefully considering the Older People's Housing Task Force's recommendations, but I'm more than happy to sit down with him and discuss this issue if he'd like to do so.
Twist.
Question 13, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Me again, Mr Speaker. We remain focused on implementing the 5-step plan we published in July last year to deliver a decade of social and affordable housing renewal. We've received incredibly ambitious bids for our £39 billion social and affordable homes programme, and we're in the process of assessing them with a view to a timely announcement of allocations. And Mr Speaker, as you know, our social housing bill, which will give affordable housing providers the clarity and confidence they need to build more social homes, is also making good progress in the other place.
Mr West.
Mr Speaker, for 14 years, the Conservatives presided over a house-building crisis that locked a generation out of home ownership and left social housing in short supply. In Blaydon and Consett, my constituents have been calling for years for more social and affordable housing to be built. Will the Minister tell me how this government are going to the extra mile to ensure that we deliver on the calls of my constituents for more social homes?
Minister.
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right. I'd go further than she did. I think the previous government deliberately set out to engineer the decline of social rented housing in this country, and not least through the reforms that they made to the right to buy, which we are reversing through that social housing bill. As I made clear to my honourable friend, we received ambitious bids from affordable housing providers across the country. That includes in the North East. That will allow councils and housing associations to start using that grant to build at scale once again.
Ellen Pace.
Question 14, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, the government remains committed to the principle of tenants and leaseholders taking over certain management functions from their landlords, and following a review of existing arrangements for the oversight of tenant management organisations, we intend to take steps to make it easier to do so. Existing statutory guidance sets out a process to intervene in cases of mismanagement, but as part of our reform agenda, we will strengthen governance and oversight, including stronger safeguards in cases where tenant safety is at risk.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Residents on the Loughborough estate in my constituency have suffered years of appalling services from their resident management organisation. The Loughborough Estate Management Board, including a failing repairs service, dangerous chemicals being stored in their community centre, allegations of threats and harassment, and more than £350,000 of funding being spent on overseas trips and gifts. 18 months ago, residents voted overwhelmingly not to renew the mandate of the Loughborough Estate Management Board, yet they are still operating, and there appears to be no straightforward mechanism the local council can use to close this failing organisation down. Will my honourable friend the Minister work with me to bring this scandalous situation to an end and ensure the residents of the Loughborough Estate receive the housing services they pay for and deserve?
I thank my honourable friend for bringing this, I have to say, alarming case to my attention. We are clear that as we look to make it easier to establish TMOs, and we want to do so, there are some very good ones out there, we must strengthen governance and accountability. And I can assure her that as part of that effort, the Secretary of State and I will be giving specific consideration to how extreme cases of mismanagement might be brought to an end as a mechanism of last resort.
David Simmons, Shadow Minister.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Speaker. I commend the honourable member for raising this issue, which is a subset of a wider issue, which I know many members will have heard from constituents. So can the Secretary of State tell the House what concrete steps they have in mind as a government off the back of the legislation passed with their support by the previous Conservative government and the legislation currently being consulted on to ensure that the kinds of rip-off fees and simply unfair arrangements that either shuffle costs onto council taxpayers for tenants in social housing or onto the wallets of private tenants can be prevented in the future, so people can have confidence that these arrangements will provide the homes that they need that are fit for the future.
Minister.
I thank the Shadow Minister for that very reasonable and apt question. We do need confidence in the system. Many tenant management organisations provide excellent resident-led housing services, but it's right that councils can intervene if things go wrong. Powers to intervene in cases of serious failings are included in the management agreement between councils and TMOs, but as I've just said in response to my honourable friend, we are reviewing where we can go further in terms of governance and accountability to ensure the right safeguards are in place.
Speaker.
Question 16, Mr Speaker.
Minister, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. And I'm delighted that Cherrywood in the member's constituency of Aldershot will be receiving up to £20 million over the next decade as part of the government's expanded Pride in Place programme. These are significant sums of money that have been committed by the government to equip the community with the resources and power to drive local change, bring people together and restore a sense of pride in their area.
Baker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Having campaigned hard for investment in my community since I became the Member of Parliament, I'm really proud that this government has invested £20 million in Cherrywood Ward. Can the Minister set out how this Pride in Place funding will help strengthen our community ties, give local people a voice in shaping the place that they call home, and make a difference to families living in Farnborough?
Minister.
Mr Speaker, can I congratulate the Honourable Member for her strong campaigning for her constituency to secure investment for her area. And she asked an important question about local people having a say over their local areas because they know best. The Pride in Place programme represents a break from the micromanagement approach of previous regeneration funds, and local boards are provided with the interventions and autonomy they need to pursue the change their community want to see. Youth centres, libraries, green spaces, cultural venues and help for families, including family hubs, will all be in the scope of support for more cohesive and resilient communities.
Go to top of those law amendments.
Mr Speaker.
Overstay.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Yesterday marked the 9th anniversary of the Grenfell Tower fire, a day for remembrance and for sombre reflection. The 72 residents who so tragically lost their lives will never be forgotten, and my thoughts are with the survivors, bereaved families and all those affected. I know they have the deepest sympathies of the whole House. We accepted the inquiry's findings last year, and we will take forward action on all 58 recommendations, determined that nothing like this can ever happen again.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his comments about Grenfell. I also welcome the legislation the government has introduced to lower the voting age to 16 and to make it easier for people to register to vote. But has the Minister also considered the potential benefits of increasing participation in elections by adding a none of the above option on all ballot papers, a change which could be made without the need for primary legislation?
Thursday.
Well, I mean, the government is very interested indeed in increasing participation in elections. I know from personal experience that the biggest way to do that is to increase levels of campaigning, because that increases turnout in those elections. But beyond that, the government has already piloted flexible voting pilots at the May 2026 elections, testing early voting and the use of non-traditional places where people can go and vote. And the Democratic Engagement Fund is providing £2.5 million to support local projects that encourage more people to vote. But of course, we want to look at all proposals to get people out and voting, because that is central to the efficiency and effectiveness of our democracy.
Secretary of State, Sir James.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And may I echo the words of the Secretary of State 9 years on from the terrible fire at Grenfell. It's incredibly important that we learn the lessons from that tragedy and ensure that people are protected in their homes. Mr Speaker, Labour says that 16 and 17-year-olds are mature enough to vote. But in a written answer to me, they also say that 16 and 17-year-olds are not mature enough to serve on juries because it is, and I quote, an adult duty. They say 16 and 17-year-olds should vote, but they also say that they shouldn't be playing on their phones after the government-defined bedtime of 8:30 in the evening. And these are just two of the list of inconsistencies triggered by their votes at 16. The only consistent thing about their votes at 16 policy is the blatant political party self-interest, isn't it?
Thursday. Of course, I'm not sure about that last point, and the laughter across the chamber, I think, probably answers that one for him. But of course, 16 and 17-year-olds were able to vote in some elections in parts of the United Kingdom while he was in government as well. And if he really felt that 16 and 17-year-olds shouldn't be able to vote anywhere, then he would have done something about it. It's only right that we standardise the system so that people of that age can vote in all elections across the country. I, for one, welcome the increase in the franchise and encouraging more people to get out and participate. It's their country too, and they deserve a say. And I hope that young people under the age of 18 will look at the Conservatives trying to deny them the vote and remember that when they are in the ballot box in future.
Sir James.
Mr. Speaker, travellers built an unauthorised development in Willows Green in my constituency over a bank holiday weekend. I wrote to the Secretary of State about this, and his reply amounted to little more than hand-wringing word salad. If he is serious about ending the abuse of retrospective planning in Essex and elsewhere, why won't he take up the proposals that we have put forward and end the build first and apply later culture?
So stay.
Well, that's exactly what the government is doing. We are looking at how we can tackle those developers who go ahead and build and then seek retrospectively planning consent. It's not acceptable. We've put more money into councils so they can fund building control functions, which were severely underfunded under the government when he was in office. That gives them more powers to take action, precisely the kind he's calling for. He had 14 years to do it. He didn't, so we're doing it for them.
Mr. Stuffer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. New towns like Tempsford should offer an opportunity to ease development pressures, not add to them. So can I thank the Minister for listening to my representations to ensure it's included within CBC's housing targets if it comes forward, rather than being an addition. But across Central Beds, we've seen lots of examples of development coming forward without the right infrastructure. So as we explore the vehicles required to bring forward new towns like Tempsford, how can we make sure we do everything possible to get infrastructure right from the outset?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend, Mr Speaker, for his constructive engagement on the New Towns programme and Tempsford in particular. That did help inform our approach, including that new town proposals should contribute towards meeting the identified housing need of relevant authorities in all instances. We're assessing options for delivery vehicles across the proposed sites, absolutely with a view to ensuring that each is best placed to drive delivery and secure essential infrastructure in a timely manner.
Sir Olney.
Mr. Speaker, the government's proposed high-value council tax surcharge will be collected by councils but retained by the Treasury. If councils are neither controlling the charge or keeping the revenue, why is it being called a council tax? Will the Minister therefore commit to changing this misleading policy title? And given that most of the revenue from this surcharge will be raised in London, will the government ensure that a fair proportion is reinvested in the capital?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the. I was very busy last week. I can assure the Shadow Secretary of State. I thank the honourable lady for her question. I think most people are bothered about the fairness of the council tax system. That's why it's right that the Chancellor introduced this policy. Rather than what it's called, I think it's important that we get on with it and introduce fairness into the system.
Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Department for Education has recently released new guidance for local authorities on the rollout of family hubs. It describes a significant departure from conventional delivery models with a high degree of network and partnership delivery, not only with public bodies but also with the voluntary sector and businesses, a change in culture that will improve all areas of local authority delivery. What measures might the Department consider to foster and facilitate networking and best practice sharing across local authorities? And will the Minister meet with me to discuss how the Family Hubs APG, which I chair, might help deliver this culture change?
Yes, I will, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the old British Home Stores building, situated at the heart of Stratford-upon-Avon, lies disused and crumbling, a blight on the beauty of our high street. Does the Minister agree that it must be made easier for communities to tackle eyesore buildings by imposing harsher measures on offending landlords and strengthening measures to allow local authorities to bring them back into productive use?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the honourable member for raising a very important issue. The devolution bill goes to some extent to addressing that, but can I also take the opportunity to highlight that the government is pushing ahead with the high streets rental auctions, which are helping to bring long-term empty shops back into use.
Jane Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The King's Speech contains an overnight visitor levy to be devolved to mayoral strategic authorities and potentially foundation strategic authorities too. Most coastal and rural areas that struggle with the impacts of tourism are not in mayoral areas. So can the Minister confirm that FSAs will also receive the power to put on the levy and meet with myself and Treasury officials to discuss?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And from the chair across the House, it's my second reminder of how important coastal communities are, and I recognise that the first time when I did the German debate just last week. The fiscal tools that will drive good growth in respective areas through mayoral strategic authorities is something that the government is committed to, and we've recently consulted on extending the power to FSAs and will publish a response shortly.
Ian Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The recently announced Greater Cambridge Development Corporation has been billed by the government as infrastructure first development. So could the Minister set out what specific new infrastructure it will have the responsibility for delivering and by when?
As the honourable gentleman knows, we're in the process of establishment that Greater Cambridge Development Corporation, and we'll set out further details as we have just a few days ago in terms of its development management powers, its planning powers and the specific sites it will be looking at going forward.
Joe Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rural housing availability is in crisis, and all tenants of an estate in my constituency near Haltwhistle, many of whom are elderly tenants in their 70s and 80s, received Section 21 notices a week before the Renters' Rights Act was due to come into effect. In a rural community like this, there simply is not similar housing nearby. It is the dismantling of a rural community. Would he therefore meet with me to discuss support that he can offer for constituents and further steps we can take to support rural communities being victimised by these practices?
I thank my honourable friend for raising this matter. I appreciate fully his concern about the potential mass eviction of his constituents. Mr. Speaker, it's precisely so that private tenants can enjoy greater security, including the growing number of older people who now rent their homes, that we abolish Section 21 no-fault evictions. I'm happy to meet with him to discuss the case further and what more support we might provide.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whitstable's latest drought was a few weeks ago during a heatwave, leaving many residents and local businesses high and dry. South East Water tell me and my neighbours that they cannot guarantee meeting current demand, so will be unable to guarantee meeting additional new homes demand. Has the Secretary of State met with them or Canterbury City Council to discuss this issue?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we meet with a range of stakeholders through the Water Delivery Task Force. I understand that in response to Canterbury's local plan consultation, the Environment Agency has recommended close liaison between the authority and South East Water to ensure that planned housing growth is located where additional water is available to supply new development.
Adam Jogi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In 2022, my constituents at No. 1 London Road in Newcastle Line were told that urgent action was needed due to fire safety concerns over the building's cladding. It's now 2026, 4 years later. That urgent action is yet to begin. So can the Minister set out what steps she will take to ensure that the BSR functions effectively and does not create greater risk through significant delays that have a huge impact on those directly impacted in Newcastle Lyme and across the country?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know that the honourable member has been working really hard to support his constituents in Newcastle under Lyme on these really important issues. I'm happy to meet with him, but to reassure him with the work going on for the Building Safety Regulator to improve performance, and it is bearing fruit.
Mr. Speaker, many councils, especially Brighton and Hove, with hundreds of acquisitions since 2017, are doing their best to buy as well as build their supply of new council housing. More family homes can be provided, and the speed of the benefits gives it a different Treasury business case. So will the Secretary of State help me win the Chancellor's support for the idea of a massive new dedicated buy the supply fund for councils?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, funding is already available to councils to acquire new market homes for social and affordable housing through our Social and Affordable Homes programme. They can obviously also rely on Section 106 contributions and the Local Authority Housing Fund, the fourth round of which makes £950 million available for councils to acquire the homes for better quality temporary accommodation.
Jonathan Dennis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. National parks and natural landscapes provide huge benefit to people's health and well-being and biodiversity in the economy as well. So can the Minister tell me what steps we may be able to take through the future NPPF that the next iteration of that will ensure that the aforementioned benefits are not undermined when there are infrastructure projects which must be progressed.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we continue to target a win-win for both development and nature. I'm more than happy to sit down with my honourable friend to discuss how the NPPF contributes to that objective.
Thank you,
Mr. Speaker. Outrageously, today the government has stripped Epping Forest District Council of the sole local right to determine major planning applications. This means that my constituents will have major planning decisions taken by central government and not by our local council. Epping Forest District is largely greenbelt, and we are already under threat from speculative housing applications, farmland being sacrificed for solar plants, and the Labour government arbitrarily reclassifying greenbelt as so-called grey belt. Yes. Will the Secretary of State step in and reverse this awful planning policy decision, which is a complete affront to local democracy?
Mr. Speaker, I don't intend to reverse the decision. I made the decision. His local authority is one of 9 that have been designated for poor performance, just as the previous government designated local authorities when they fell below the required standards in terms of their planning processes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sadly, the recent closure of family-run business Scent from Dudley, Black Star, Ghanaian Product and Family Bargains Hardware in Dudley is symptomatic of a wider trend of high street shopfronts closing. What steps is the Minister taking to speed up high street regeneration by bringing back empty shops into use, and will he come to visit Dudley Town High Street to see what else we can do?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the right honourable member for raising this very important issue. There are 2 things I'd like to point to. One is that we will later this year bring forward a high street strategy backed by at least £115 million. And as I said earlier, we're pushing ahead with the High Streets Rental Auctions programme, which is already seeing empty shops being brought back into use.
Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What will the Minister do to stop developers using viability assessments to wriggle out of providing affordable homes for communities like mine in Westmorland? An agreement for 12 affordable houses is going to be delivered in Allithwaite near Grange over Sands. That's been torn up. The Council has no power to stop it. Will you help us? Will he help us?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we think it's right that developers should be able to use site-by-site viability assessments. The alternative where viability challenges are acute is that we get no homes coming forward at all. But we've consulted through the recent consultation on the NPPF on standardised inputs to viability. As I said, we'll set out further steps in due course.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Leaseholders at Southend's Meridian Port are trapped in an unbearable financial situation as a result of £3 million in internal defects bill and a £450,000 fight against their buildings developer. Their block is 80 metres in height and they are not entitled to funding the support that they desperately need and have been offered just £50,000 towards their legal fees by Homes England. Will the Minister look at how we can look at the existing funding criteria for mid-rise buildings and encourage Homes England to fully support leaseholders in taking on well-resourced developers?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Buildings between 11 and 18 metres may be able to enter the cladding safety scheme, but I am happy to meet my honourable friend to discuss this further.
How can it be justified for a unitary authority to be formed which rips the waterside away from the new forest and places it under the control of Labour-dominated Southampton when the building blocks of the new unitary authorities were stated by the government to be the existing areas covered by district and borough councils?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the right honourable gentleman for his question. The Secretary of State took the decisions about local government reorganisation according to the criteria we set out. I hear the honourable gentleman's comments and we'll take those into account as we move forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for the decision that he's taken today with regards to continued and ongoing failings by Chilwell District Council with regards to major planning applications. However, given that Banbury has a really huge and very desperate housing need, would the Minister agree to meet with me in order to discuss how we can fix that despite the Council?
I'm more than happy to meet with my honourable friend to discuss the housing challenges in his particular part of the country.
Josh Babrin.
I'm leading the campaign in Eastbourne to register Eastbourne Pier as an asset of community value to safeguard its future. Will the government back this campaign to ensure that Eastbourne Pier continues to stand strong?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Having served as a council leader, I know just how important community assets are, and I'm very happy to meet the right honourable member to further discuss the issue.
Peter Swallow.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend will know how enthusiastic I am for a Thames Valley Foundation Strategic Authority covering Berkshire, Oxfordshire and Swindon. But he'll also know my concerns about an SDS being imposed on us on a different, larger geography. Does he share my concerns that this would undermine devolution before it even started?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm aware of my honourable friend's robust views about this matter. There are a range of views about the right geographies for spatial development strategies. The Minister for Faith, Devolution and Communities and I are looking at all the responses we've received to the consultation and make decisions on the full basis of having those fed in.
Hines.
Mr. Speaker, further to his earlier answer to my right honourable friend, will the Secretary of State take the opportunity of the new NPPF to make absolutely clear that if you willfully ignore, not inadvertently, but deliberately and willfully ignore the need for planning consent, you will not then subsequently be able to get retrospective permission?
Well, we're not going to rule out, Mr. Speaker, retrospective planning applications of any kind. I think residents across the country putting in conservatories and then applying in instances where they forgot to submit the paperwork would take issue with that. I have it as there is a specific issue about intentional unauthorised development. We're looking at it through the NPPF. I recently had a meeting with a large group of members across the House, including members of the front bench, where we discussed the possible options we can look to bear down on the practices we're seeing, which is a new business model that exploits a particular set of challenges.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week we held interviews for our chair of our neighbourhood board for Pride in Place in Redditch. Would the Minister join me in thanking all those that put their name forward and also encourage all residents in Greenlands and Woodrow to take part in this scheme, which will see the largest single financial investment in my town in my entire lifetime?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I join the right honourable member in recognising the significant investment for his area? The Pride in Place programme rolled out by the government is our commitment to devolution and investing in areas that have for far too long been ignored.
Final question, Brixman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Planning Minister review the 2,500 square metre threshold for edge of town centre and out of town centre planning applications to conduct an impact on the high street assessment, particularly through the lens of supermarkets setting up things like key cutting and shoe repair kiosks to decimate our high streets, as has happened in Princes Risborough recently?
If the honourable gentleman wants to write to me with further details about the matter, I will of course consider it.
Let the front benches change over. Come to the urgent question. Leader of the opposition, Kemi Baden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Secretary of State for Defence if he will make a statement on the effect of the delay of the Defence Investment Plan on our armed forces' ability to defend the United Kingdom.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I turn to the matter before us, the whole House will want to join me in recognising the remarkable work of our armed forces this weekend. In the Channel, UK forces boarded a sanctioned vessel from Russia's Shadow Fleet to disrupt the flow of funds to Putin's illegal war in Ukraine. The Defence Secretary will be making a statement on that shortly. Mr. Speaker, these are extraordinary times for defence. The threats are real and they're increasing. It's no secret that I worked in lockstep with the former Defence Secretary. He is a friend and mentor. I was his deputy and I'm still standing here because he asked me to stay and because we need continuity in this complex and difficult operational environment. The DIP will be published before the NATO summit. Do we need to spend more on defence? Yes. Does the Prime Minister and the Chancellor agree? Yes. Are we spending more? Yes. This year's defence budget is £11 billion more than the final year under the Conservatives. Are we learning the lessons from Ukraine? Yes. Are we retiring old kit to invest in new capabilities? Yes. Are we backing our people? Yes. The biggest pay rise in 20 years, a £9 billion plan to fix the defence housing crisis we inherited, and it's working. Intake is up 11.6%, outflow down 8.9%, and morale is up. And to answer her question directly, if asked to fight tonight, could our forces defend the UK? Yes. and they already do every single day. Are we planning to increase their capabilities to deter and defend the UK and our allies? Yes, we are. Would I like to go further? Of course. The new Defence Secretary has stepped up to serve, as he has done before, sleeves rolled up and determined to meet the moment to get defence the best deal. And let me say plainly, I know the PM is committed to do so as well. He said in Munich, to meet the wider threat, it is clear that we are going to have to spend more faster. And at the weekend, he said, 3% in the next Parliament, defence will be the #1 priority at every spending review, including the next spending review. The disagreement in recent weeks was never about whether we should fund our forces. It's about how fast we increase the spending for defence and on what capabilities. And that's a serious argument to have. And I make no apology for pushing hard within the government to win it. That is the job. But the job is also a team sport, and that's why the MOD, with the new Defence Secretary, is working with the Treasury, other government departments and Number 10 to get this right.
Mr. Speaker, it speaks volumes that a junior minister has been sent to answer this question today. If the new Defence Secretary is too scared to face tough questions at the dispatch box, waiting for an easier statement later, then I don't have much confidence in him facing down the threat from Russia. It has been 2 years since Labour paused the Conservatives' plan to fund our armed forces. A year since their strategic defence review. A year since their strategic defence review. We have been warning that the delays to the defence investment plan were...
Order. People have gone onto the front bench. Don't bring the backbench habits to the front bench, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have been warning that the delays to the defence investment plan were making our troops and our country less safe. Last week, the Defence Secretary and the Minister for the Armed Forces quit the government because they know those warnings were true and they were no longer willing to defend the indefensible. They have done the honourable thing by resigning. It could not have been easy for the former Defence Secretary, a Labour man through and through, when he said, and I quote, "I am being forced to make decisions that would increase the risk to personnel on operations and could make the country less safe." That is absolutely shocking. What on earth is the government playing at? The statement that the Minister has just given shows that the government are still in denial. He did not say that there would be extra money for the Defence Investment Plan, as his former mentor, so he says, asked for. The Prime Minister needs to tell the Chancellor to find the money. The answer is to cut the welfare budget. And I am willing to lend the government 116 votes to do just that, because I know they won't do it, on the proviso that the Defence Investment Plan meets 3 simple tests. First, the government must at a minimum find the £28 billion that the Chief of the Defence Staff has said is needed. Will they? Second, that funding must be provided before 2030. Will it? There's no kicking into the long grass here, Mr. Speaker. And if the answer to both questions is no, then this minister should have resigned along with his colleagues. Third, that funding must ensure we are ready to fight the wars of the future, not the past. I am sure the minister will now stand up and try and blame this situation on Conservative governments, forgetting that these are new threats, not past threats. This government needs to stop wasting time and do what is necessary to keep the British people safe today.
Minister.
Well, can I thank the right honourable lady for her question and for the tone in which she's asked it. We often have a lot of shouting from her front bench, but I appreciate the professionalism and calm that she asked those questions. Let me be very clear.
Order. I think those two just want to spoil it. I'm sure they won't, Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me be very clear. The Defence Secretary is currently with His Majesty the King and will be in the House this afternoon making a statement on the operations over the weekend. I have to say, I recognise that she got her revenge in early by saying, I will seek to blame it on the Conservatives. Let me be very clear. The right honourable lady will know that we inherited forces that have been hollowed out and underfunded by the Conservatives, that we inherited defence housing, where families were being asked to sleep in bedrooms with black mould, leaky roofs and broken boilers, that 47 of 49 major defence programmes we inherited at the general election were over budget and unfunded. However, we've also been very clear that we are increasing defence spending. I appreciate that she had a pre-scripted questions, but if she listened to what I said at the start, she would know that we're increasing defence spending, an extra £11 billion.
Order. I think you've just proved the point. When you request an urgent question and the question's been asked, allow the Minister to ask without comment, without two of you, either side, chipping in. I don't need it, you don't want it, so I'm not being funny. This affects all our constituencies and our constituents, so please, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are increasing defence spending. The budget this year is £11 billion more than the budget in the last year of the Conservative government. We are ending that hollowing out, but of course I want more money in the defence budget. It's a case that we continue to make as the profile of defence spending increases. I welcome a debate that says what capabilities will we spend that increasing defence funding on? And she is right when she says we need to fight the wars of tomorrow. That's why we're investing in more autonomy. That's why we're investing in more drones, a hybrid navy and the increased stockpiles that we need to deter Russian aggression. There's more work to do, and the new Defence Secretary is working with his sleeves rolled up to deliver the best deal that we can, and we will publish the Defence Investment Plan ahead of the NATO summit.
Alex Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the past 18 months, I've been talking to the former Defence Secretary and ministers across government as part of my campaign for the UK to co-found the Defence Security and Resilience Bank. As my right honourable friend noted in his resignation letter, we need to find different ways to finance our defence industry, and that should include standing with our allies and working internationally. Will the government now listen to calls from across the House to join this World Bank for Defence as a matter of urgency? Because we cannot afford for British defence industry to be locked out of this bank. The Charter will be signed at the NATO summit and the clock is ticking.
Minister.
Well, can I thank my more friend for her work, not just on the lobbying for the DSRB, but I know that as an MP for a military town, she is a real champion, not just for the army, but also for local businesses in her patch. We're working to look at what are the multinational mechanisms that would best deliver for defence, and importantly also for the defence supply chain, to make sure that there is the ability to finance the growth that we expect in the defence supply chain. That work is continuing, but I'd encourage her to continue having conversations with the Treasury, who lead on that aspect.
James McCleary, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are now 9 months overdue a defence investment plan. I hear almost daily from defence SMEs who are facing a funding precipice. Many are warning that without certainty from government, they'll be unable to invest, hire, or even in some cases continue to operate at all. So will the Minister tell this House what assessment has been made of the financial impact on the UK defence industry of the continued delay to the defence investment plan? The government's own National Security Advisor has said that an extra £18 billion at a minimum is needed for our armed forces, and it's likely a lot more than that. So given his former colleagues' decisions to resign on a matter of principle over government's failure to fund defence properly, will the Minister himself resign if he fails to secure at least that minimum allocation? And in the spirit of constructive opposition, may I suggest a way for him to avoid that fate entirely? Will he consider backing Lib Dem defence bonds, which would raise £20 billion over 2 years and give our armed forces the immediate injection of funding that they need for certainty?
Minister.
Well, can I thank him for his questions? He will know that we've signed 1,400 major defence contracts since the general election. That has supported thousands of SMEs. He will also know that we've stood up the Defence Office for Small Business Growth, a single doorway to increase the direct spend with SMEs by the Ministry of Defence by 50% by 2028. We will continue to work on that. And as a defence-focused MP, before I was a shadow defence minister, let alone a defence minister, I'm proud of the advocacy that I have made for Devonport, for Plymouth, for our armed forces. I will continue to make that case from within government to give our forces the funding they need, the increasing defence spending that we need, that the government has already set out an ambition to deliver. I will continue to make the case for that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend may know that Aralis, a British aerospace company seeking to develop a replacement for the Red Arrows, has gone into administration, and the company is in part blaming the delays to the Defence Investment Plan for this terrible outcome. can I thank my honourable friend for the time he's taken with me, looking for opportunities to invest defence spend in my constituency, but can he do more to ensure that the Defence Investment Plan brings good quality jobs right across this country?
Minister.
Well, can I thank him for his question? We've discussed Aralis together. We are committed to the red arrows. There will be a competition to replace the red arrows, but also the Hawk T1, T2 training system that we have today that provides the pilots of the future. That will be a competitive process, and it will be up to companies to provide a design, an option and a training system to support that, and that competition will launch in due course.
Of the House, Sir Edward Lee.
When the nation is at risk and the Leader of the Opposition asks a question, it's frankly cowardly for the Secretary of State not to turn up. His duty is to be here in our House of Commons.
Just say to the Father of the House, the King has summoned him, and he is with the King at the moment. And I think about the language used about being cowardly, I think it's not called for, and I expect better from the Father of the House.
I'm sure the King would have understood, but we'll leave it like that. Can I just ask the Secretary of State this? He constantly blames the previous Conservative government, but the fact is that times have changed. Let's look at history. When we were in the same situation in the 1930s, we were only spending 2.5% in 1935 on defence. And then we increased it to 9%. The whole nation came together. The Leader of the Opposition has given him a deal. We will combine with him to slash the totally huge welfare budget. We will help them meet what the previous Secretary of State wanted. Why did the previous Secretary of State resign?
Minister.
Well, first of all, can I be very clear with the right honourable gentleman, who I have a lot of time for, that the new Defence Secretary is someone who served our country in uniform, served in the parachute regiment, was awarded an MBE for his work in uniform, is someone who I am very proud to serve alongside, and is someone who I am working alongside now to ensure that we can deliver a defence investment plan with the funding that's required to renew our forces. He is right when he says times have changed. That's precisely why the defence investment plan capabilities that we're looking at looks at retiring old kit and bringing on investment in new kit, in particular drones, one-way effector, the hybrid navy and autonomy, something that we're learning the lessons from Ukraine on. Because we are there standing alongside our friends in Ukraine, we can see how Russia fights, we can see what works, and we're using that knowledge to not only support our friends in Ukraine, but bring that back for capabilities for the UK Armed Forces. And when the DIP is published shortly, he'll be able to see that.
Jasmine Koresh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I refer the House to my entry in the Register of Members' Financial Interest as member of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. I must say that I find it remarkable that the Conservatives raised this today, given that under their watch, real-term defence spending fell by 22%, and their own former Defence Secretary admitted that they had left our armed forces hollowed out and underfunded. And, Mr. Speaker, we should also reject the framing of this debate. Pitting welfare against security is divisive and corrosive, and we should call out for what it is. This government is already spending £62.2 billion on defence this year, rising to £73.5 billion by 28-29. Can the Secretary of State confirm that when the Defence Investment Plan is published, it will maximise spending with British industries so that every pound spent also strengthens our industrial base and
I think the Minister's got it. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I say to my honourable friend that I remember sitting where the Leader of the Opposition is now when the then Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, described the hollowing out and underfunding of the Conservative government. But let me also be very clear and answer my honourable friend's question directly. I want more of a rising defence budget spent with British companies. An increasing defence budget spent with British companies is more jobs, more opportunities for our young people. Defence spending is reindustrialisation of our communities. It is an engine for growth, and that's why we're investing in skills, that's why we're investing in our SMEs, that's why we're investing in innovation. And if we do all of that right, we'll give our fighting forces the equipment they need to deter aggression and defeat it if necessary. The case on how much we spend, how quickly we spend it, is one that I welcome. I will continue making the case for more defence spending for defence, as I know the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are aware of and are increasing defence spending.
Chair of the PAC, Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House will be aware that we spend £333 billion a year on the Department for Work and Pensions. We spend less than a fifth of that on defence, £62 billion. The Prime Minister, in his speech this morning, talked about government being a choice. Is this the right choice?
Minister.
I have a lot of time for the right honourable gentleman, and he will know that much of the budget that he described from DWP pays pensions, pays benefits for those people who can't work, and where people can work, we're giving them support to get back into the economy, to get back into work, and that's an important part of a Labour government's mission to help everyone work if they can. Now, his case that he makes for increasing defence spending, I think, is one that is part of this debate. I'm equally interested in not just what is the total figure, but on what capabilities are we spending it on. And so it's not just about a calendar day when a document gets published. Let's also make sure that in this debate we can say what capabilities, what drones, what ability in our hybrid navy, what do we need to invest in to create the deterrence that we need and to increase our warfighting readiness. That is a good debate to have.
Jane Kirkham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is not year zero. The 2.5% target hasn't been hit since 2010, the end of the last Labour government, and there's been an extra £11 billion since the end of the last government. I met my ex-husband in the Fleet Air Arm in 2003, just in time to witness some of the hollowing out of the armed forces, with the loss of capability and good people. I want to thank my honourable friend for providing the continuity needed for these detailed negotiations. Can he confirm there'll be a fully funded plan on defence for the first time in a generation by the NATO summit?
Minister.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for her work? Not only is she a good voice in support of the armed forces in her constituency, she is one of the loudest voices in support of the Royal Fleet Auxiliary, a really key part of our military apparatus and something that we are continuing to invest in. She's right that we will publish a fully funded defence investment plan ahead of the NATO summit in only a few weeks' time. It is the first time in 20 years that we've had a line-by-line review of defence spending. It does look at the capabilities we need, the investment not just in kit and equipment, but also in our people and our estates.
Monica Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, at the glorious Princess Alice Summer Fete in my constituency, I met Glenn, Royal Navy vet whose last deployment was aboard HMS Broadsword. He said to me, "What are they doing to the Royal Navy? I want you to represent me and tell them that they need to sort it out." So I am, Mr. Speaker, telling them to sort it out. What is our government bucking, taking the responsible decisions to fund the defence investment plan properly, and why are they disregarding the Liberal Democrat proposals to fund it through defence bonds, rising up to £20 billion over 2 years, so that Glenn and other vets are proud of the services rather than despairing that they used to serve so well?
Well, HMS Broadsword was quite a ship. I remember going on her when I was growing up in Plymouth many, many moons ago. And that is a good example for what we are doing. We're having to retire old capabilities. The frigate force in particular, Type 23s were run on far too long. They should have been replaced long before the orders were placed by the last government. That is creating difficulties in the frigates we have. But let me tell Glenn and the House what we're doing about it. We're investing in a new hybrid navy with more autonomous uncrewed capabilities. We're installing Dragonfire, our directed energy weapons system, on Type 45 destroyers. We're addressing the retention and recruitment crisis that saw so many of our Navy personnel hollowed out, especially addressing those shortage subjects like marine engineers, for instance, and making sure that we're giving our Royal Marines the latest kit and equipment, the new Kraken K3 Scouts for 4-7 Commando being a good example of how we're equipping our Royal Marines with the equipment they need.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as the Minister will know from his many welcome visits to the Filton and Bradley Stoke constituency, my community is proudly home to MOD Abbey Wood, the Centre of Defence Equipment and Support, and many brilliant defence companies of a wide range of sizes. Could the Minister please set out how he expects the Defence Investment Plan to support important businesses like these?
Minister.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for her question? She's right, I've had a lot of good times in Filton and Bradley Stoke, not only with the amazing people that work at the National Armaments Directors Group at Abbey Wood, people who work tirelessly to give our people the kit and equipment they need, but also seeing some of the superb work that Rolls-Royce are carrying out, for instance, not only in supporting GCAP, but supporting the operational effectiveness of our air platforms today. There's other businesses, large and small, in her patch that will benefit from the 10 years of certainty that will come from the Defence Investment Plan, and it will be published before the NATO summit.
Gavin Williamson.
I think we all very much welcomed the amazing work that Lord Robertson did along with his team, including General Barrons and Fee Hill. Those 62 recommendations that were put there, how many of those recommendations have the government still committed to?
All of them.
Chris Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister will know that Redditch is home to many businesses who proudly support our armed forces. I think he may have just touched upon this in the previous answer, but can the Minister confirm that when the Prime Minister does go to the NATO summit next month, that the DIP will be published in full?
Minister.
Can I thank my own friend for his question? Yes, we will be publishing the DIP ahead of the NATO summit, as the Prime Minister has set out now for a number of weeks. That DIP will not only set out the kit and capabilities, importantly, unlike the defence equipment plans that we inherited from the party opposite that were unfunded with an £18 billion black hole in their equipment plan, for instance, the DIP will also look at the estates, the housing situation and our people. Vital enablers of a whole defence project. That's why a line-by-line review that has highlighted the mistakes, the lack of support contracts that we saw from the Conservatives, for instance. It will be a funded plan, as I've set out, and it will be published ahead of the NATO summit.
Connie Kruger.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The defence funding is obviously very late, and clearly it's going to be inadequate as well. But an even greater scandal is surely the fact that the spending itself is so poorly conducted. Our procurement system is slow, wasteful and outdated. He praised them earlier, but does he not accept that the bureaucrats who gave us the Ajax programme cannot command the confidence of the armed forces? Does he acknowledge that the part of the MOD that he oversees, procurement, is slow, wasteful, it procures outdated equipment, it is the most dysfunctional part of the British state?
I mean, that sounds like a very good description from when he was a Conservative of his government's record on procurement. But let me say this very simply to Reform. Where is your defence spokesperson? Where are they? Reform MPs are often missing from defence events. Where are they? Let's make sure that we have the investment, because I want to see armed forces that stand up to Russia, not Reform politicians that accept bribes from Russia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for coming to reply to this UQ. One area which has been truly shocking for many years is the condition that our armed services are forced to live in. Disgraceful, appalling conditions. The Minister is aware that the Defence Housing Strategy launched last year, and I thank him for giving me a briefing on that. Part of that is funding from the Strategic Defence Review. Can the Minister outline that that funding is still secured? Obviously, we are seeing concerns with the overall defence investment plan.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for her question? It was a scandal that so many of our armed forces personnel were being asked and required to live in accommodation with black mould, broken boilers and leaky roofs. It directly affected the fall in morale that we saw in every single service for nearly the duration of the Conservative government. It led to the retention and recruitment crisis, and it is the reason why in opposition we said we'd make improving defence housing a priority, in government why we've announced a £9 billion programme to improve defence homes, and we've set out already that not only did we have a target of delivering improvements to the 1,000 worst defence homes by Christmas, a target we achieved and delivered ahead of time, but we've now also completed the next 200 most appalling homes, and we're getting after it. So by the next decade, 9 in 10 defence homes will either have been rebuilt or refurbished, giving our people the homes that they should have had for many, many years, but they're only getting because of a Labour government funding it.
Sir Bernard Jenk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister realise how utterly discredited the government now looks? And is it not because we all understand that there is probably a majority in this House for the government to take the necessary measures to find the extra money necessary for defence? But it's the failure of the Prime Minister to manage his own party which is at the root of this problem. Will changing the leader make any difference?
Minister.
I'm here to talk about defence policy rather than Labour Party leadership, I'm afraid. But let me be very clear. The Prime Minister has set out his desire to spend more on defence and spend it faster. I welcome that. I want to see more defence spending. That's why we have a profile that already increases spending, that gets to 2.5% on defence in April 2027, something never achieved in 14 years of Conservative government. So I welcome the debate about how we can go faster on defence spending. I think it's important. I also want to see a debate about what capabilities we're spending on, how much more of that money is directed at UK businesses. That is what I hope will happen in the next couple of weeks.
Jacob Collier.
Mr. Speaker, the government has led with a NATO-first approach in the SDR and also worked to strengthen the alliance. At the 2025 Hague Summit, the alliance committed to 3.5% GDP spend by 2035. So can the Minister say what conversations he's had with NATO partners around the DIP so that we can all work towards that increased spending goal?
Okay, I thank my honourable friend. Working with NATO partners is a key plank of how we increase the deterrence and security of the United Kingdom. In the past few days, I've had conversations with our friends in Norway around how we can build a combined frigate force. I've had conversations with our French, German, Polish and Italian allies about how we can bring forward more defence investment, working together on a number of capabilities. We'll continue to do that, but as my own friend has set out, we are committed to 3.5% of defence as part of 5% being spent on national security by 2035, 3% in the next Parliament, and I will continue to make the case for increased defence spending and more capabilities for our armed forces.
Cameron Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to put on record my respect for the members for Royal Marsh and Conisbrough and for Birmingham Selly-Oak. Both served in the roles they relinquished last week with the sincerity and integrity those roles demanded. Each should be commended for having put the needs of our country before their own this past week, citing the government's underwhelming commitment to defence investment. Of course, the rest of us will just have to take their word for it. I also have great respect for the Secretary of State for Defence incumbent. I know he's with the King this week and unable to explain what it is about the government's approach that inspires him but not his predecessor. In his absence, I wonder if the Minister could explain to us when we will see the defence investment plan that he has now been left to front.
I thank him for his question. It's the same answers I've been given for quite some time. The Defence Investment Plan will be published ahead of the NATO summit in only a few weeks' time. But can I join him in his words of thanks to the previous Defence Secretary and also the previous Minister for the Armed Forces, having two people with a passion for defence serving alongside has been a real privilege for me. I share that passion and commitment for the new Defence Secretary. We've got a job to get this right. We know it's important, we know it matters, and that's why we're continuing to increase defence spending. A debate that says how quickly we're increasing that defence spending and what more can we do is a debate that I welcome. But let's also make sure we're talking about what we're spending it on and make sure within that debate it's not just kit and equipment, it's our people as well that get a mention.
So we are talking this afternoon of spending, but modern warfare, like warfare since time immemorial, depends on the bravery of our fighting men and our fighting women. But we also need nimble and effective industrial base, for we used to have arrows, then there were bullets and shells, now drones and tech. So how can we be best prepared for the next war and support the SMEs in places such as Suffolk?
Well, can I thank him for his question? He is an assiduous raiser of the people in terms of tech. But I visited Suffolk, and it is an area where I've seen SMEs do really well. Indeed, I've been to a drone manufacturing company from Ukraine set up in that part of the world. We need to learn the lessons from Ukraine, and that means more autonomy, more drones, more joined up way of thinking, a change in the way we fight, if only because the way that Russia has fought in Ukraine shows that some of the doctrine that we've traditionally worked on, that we inherited from the Conservatives, about what's the difference between the close and the deep, how does artillery and drones work together, how can you hold ground and take it, have changed fundamentally. That's why we're setting out in the Defence Investment Plan the implementation of the SDR that starts that process that gets us to a more lethal force.
Julian.
I know the Minister accepts that I've criticised successive governments for not spending anything like the 4.5% that Margaret Thatcher used to spend on defence at the height of the Cold War throughout the 1980s. But does he accept that the service chiefs have made an objective assessment of the government's own strategic defence review and have arrived at the conclusion that the sum of £28 billion is necessary to implement it over, I believe, a 4-year period. If he accepts that, how can he possibly go along with an offer from the Treasury of less than half the total needed?
Minister.
Well, I have a lot of time for the right honourable gentleman, and he and I were on different sides of the chamber but made the case for increased defence spending in the last Parliament, and I'm glad that he is with me in arguing for increased defence spending in this Parliament as well. We'll continue to make the case for that and look at how we can deliver those increased capabilities.
Brenda Singh Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the beginning of the month, I attended the NATO Parliamentary Assembly Spring Assembly in Lithuania with representatives of other NATO and other allies, including Ukraine. The Labour Party, Mr. Speaker, you'll be aware the Labour Party has a strong tradition going back to Ernest Bevin in maintaining a strong and effective defence for our nation, both within NATO and independently. So after 14 failed Tory years, and considering other NATO countries are already well ahead of us in relation to the proportion of their GDP they're spending on defence, what will the Minister be doing to ensure our armed forces receive the transformation they require to face modern-day threats, with an industrial sector to support, so that we do not betray Labour's strong defence tradition?
Minister.
Can I thank him and the work that he does with the NATO Parliamentary Assembly? It's important that we not just have a Labour government that has a NATO-first approach, but we have parliamentarians from all parties that make the case for UK leadership. We are working with a number of our NATO allies currently, both in terms of the coalition of the willing activity with Ukraine, but also the UK-led mission in the Strait of Hormuz that will help reopen and demine it in the future, to work with our NATO friends to make sure we're increasing deterrence and, where possible, moving from interoperability to interchangeability to make sure the kit and equipment that we have is shared. Now, that increases warfighting ability, it increases lethality, it smooths supply chains, and it poses a greater deterrent option against Russia, which is what we're going to continue doing. We will work with our NATO friends not only on joint procurement projects, but also how we can operate, train and deploy more together.
Brendan O'Hara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just when the High North and the Arctic is emerging as one of the world's most important strategic hotspots, we witnessed a major UK government department disintegrate before our eyes when the Secretary of State, because of the parsimony of the Treasury, resigned, taking with him the Armed Forces Minister and a junior minister. How does he think that the Prime Minister will convince our NATO allies that he is capable of defending that strategically important Greenland-Iceland-UK gap when he cannot even convince his own colleagues that he can?
Minister.
Well, can I thank him for his question? It's not normal that the SNP have a very strong pro-defence line, but it is, I guess perhaps welcome, and if this is a change of heart from the Scottish nationalists, I would broadly welcome that. He will have seen the action over the weekend against Russia's Shadow Fleet. He will also know of the work that we do out of Scotland, both in terms of Faslane with the submarine operating base, but also RAF Lossiemouth, for instance, with the P-8 Maritime Patrol aircraft and the quick reaction response aircraft that we have from there, ensuring that we work with, in particular, our Norwegian allies, but our allies across the High North. The Defence Investment Plan only increases the investment in that part of the world because it is an area where we're seeing increased risk from Russia. We're seeing an increased number of Russian boats ships in our waters, and we know the threats to our underseas cable and our airspace is real and increasing. And I hope that we can find a new cross-party consensus with the SNP, which I hope will start with the SNP government funding the second DTEC in Scotland to give our young people the skills they need.
Well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud that Blackpool and Fowl College in my constituency has been selected as one of the 5 Defence Technical Excellent Colleges which my honourable friend have seen, and is part of a major national investment in skills. But given the significant opportunities this brings to Blackpool and its potential, can the Minister confirm that if this Defence Investment Plan will supply and support young people with the careers it needs in the defence industry?
It was a real privilege to be in Blackpool for the announcement of the 5 English DTECs it is an opportunity, I think, for the very first time for defence to invest in skills of our young people. And he will have seen not only a Labour government investing in further education with the 5 DTECs in England, 1 in Wales, hopefully 2 in Scotland, but he will also have seen the last week our announcement of a funding for more further education colleges and universities to provide defence and defence adjacent skills, because to deliver on the increased defence spending we are making, we're going to need to see more investment in skills, especially between 16 and 19-year-olds, graduates, and an area that's talked about less, which is retraining mid-careers, which I know Blackpool has a real focus on, especially working with BAE Systems on the Typhoons out of Salisbury and Walton.
Harriet Baldwin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On the 1st of July, the Trade Minister is slapping a 50% tariff on steel from many of our allies, much of which goes into the aerospace and defence supply chain that will affect the cost of his defence investment plan. So can he urgently review those tariffs and their impact on our defence spending? Because I'm sure the Minister will agree that he wants to get the most bang for his money in terms of funding defence.
Minister.
Can I thank her for her question? She's right in arguing that we need more investment in our steel industry. It's why the Defence Industrial Strategy identified steel as one of the sectors we need to invest more in. It's also why, under this government, we're seeing more investment in, say, Sheffield's Forge Masters, which has a specialist steel-making capability that we use in certain parts of defence. I'm very happy if she wants to write to me about the particular issue that she raises.
Mr. Speaker, there's been a lot of talk about additional money needed for defence for a very long time. Can I just ask the Minister, what would he do with more money that he can't do now?
Minister.
I thank my friend for his question. Look, I want to see more defence spending, but the way that we've drafted the defence investment plan is as a scalable proposition. So with more defence spending, we would see more drones, more investment in our stockpile. We'll see a faster recovery of personnel numbers. We'll see more investment in autonomy and the hybrid navy. And we'll see more investment in housing and the regeneration of our estates, in particular, the regeneration of our ports and our naval refit facilities. That would make such a big difference towards availability. The DIP is deliberately designed to be a scalable plan to reflect the spending that we receive.
So Desmond Swade.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister told us that the former Secretary of State had asked him to stay. Had he not been so asked, would he have resigned too?
Yes.
How much persuasion did it take?
Yes.
Here's a good one. I have to say, as someone who comes from a defence family, who's the leader of the opposition sighs. Let's talk about those people who have a proud military family that they come from. I'm proud that my old man was a submariner. I'm proud of his service. I represent a military city. It has taken years upon years to get a Labour government. I respect the decision that my former ministerial colleagues made. I decided to stay. I was encouraged to stay. There's a good reason for doing so. And given the activities that we've seen over the weekend, I can say that I'm proud to be continuing to work alongside some incredibly brave and professional people in our armed forces to keep our nation safe.
Adam Jogi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I acknowledge the service of my right honourable friend, the member for Romarsh, and those who worked in his office, and I'm very sorry to see them go. Mr. Speaker, I thank the Minister for his response, but I have to say to him, this is one heck of a mess. I know how difficult it can be to work with the Treasury, and I know there's much we have to do, but my constituents want to know that we'll do whatever we must to keep them safe. So when I go home on Thursday, how can I tell them that we will?
Minister.
Can I thank him for his question? Look, we're already increasing defence spending. We're already renewing our forces. We're already fixing defence housing. We're already increasing the pay of our armed forces. We're already tackling the toxic culture that existed in our armed forces to make working in defence good for every single person. But I want to see that go faster, go further. With more defence spending, we can deliver more and greater deterrence and greater lethality. A debate around increasing defence spending is a welcome one for me as someone who feels passionate about defence. I have a lot of time for the former Defence Secretary and the former Armed Forces Minister and the arguments that they have made. I want to see more defence spending. The new Defence Secretary wants to get the best deal for our armed forces. And I know the Prime Minister and the Chancellor equally are planning to increase defence spending. A debate that says how fast, by when and spending on what is a debate that I welcome.
Sir Jeremy Hunt.
Mr. Speaker, I recognise the Minister has a difficult job to do today, but has he not noticed that even though Labour has 3 times more MPs, there have been nearly twice as many Conservatives here today? And is that not because his colleagues are voting with their feet and saying that the former Defence Secretary was right and cannot defend the indefensible?
Minister.
Can I thank the right honourable member for his question? As he will know if he was in more defence questions, I like defence scrutiny. I like defence debates. And as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Speaker, let's everyone go round again, because the more questions on defence, especially on capabilities, not timing, not what happened last week, but on the capabilities we need to invest in, is a debate that I welcome.
Andrew Lewin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The past is a story of the Conservatives hollowing out our defence. The present is a story of this government spending more than they did at any time over 14 years. But my question is about the future. Our brave allies in Ukraine have revolutionised warfare. They might want to listen to this. It's serious. They have shown the effectiveness of drone technology. They are turning the tables on the Russians. In the Defence Investment Plan, how can we learn from our allies in Ukraine?
Minister.
Can I thank him for his question? I know the Conservatives don't like hearing about their hollowing out of the armed forces. That is what we inherited. That's what we're trying to put right. And if they had spent the level of defence spending they now argue for when they were in power only 2 years ago, perhaps we wouldn't have such a big challenge today. I don't like it when they groan about our armed forces. I don't think it's respectful enough for what we need. However, but for his question about here, when we look at Ukraine, we can see not only the drone technology, we can see the way that's changing with an electronic warfare environment. We're supporting that. We're buying 120,000 drones this year for our friends in Ukraine, utilising cutting-edge British technology, some brilliant British companies working with brilliant Ukrainian companies. And we're not only looking at small drones, we're not just looking at the EW environment, we're not just looking at radars and command and control systems. What I'm seeing from Ukraine is how we build those all together. The former Minister for the Armed Forces set out very clearly from his perspective how we can learn from Ukraine. The Strategic Defence Review sets out how we're learning from Ukraine, and the Defence Investment Plan sets out how we will buy more drone technology and learn there. But more investment going into defence is one that I welcome, and the more that we can learn from Ukraine, the greater deterrent capability we have to stop Putin looking over the NATO boundary and thinking he can have a go at a Baltic state or somewhere along the eastern flank or even the United Kingdom.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This year, global arms expenditure will be around $3 trillion. Every country that is raising expenditure is doing so through taxation, through cuts or through debt. In drawing up this defence spending strategy, what consideration did his department or the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office give to a strategy for multilateral negotiations, for the détente, for peace in the future, as a way of everybody benefiting from a peace dividend of less being spent on arms rather than more?
Of all the people that I wasn't expecting to be arguing for more defence spending, I wasn't certain the right honourable gentleman would be doing so. But let me say very clearly to him, NATO is the guarantor of much of our security. We are proud to have a NATO-first policy in this government, working with our NATO allies across the Euro-Atlantic area to deter Russian aggression. We can see what happens when deterrence fails. We can look at our friends in Ukraine to see Russian aggression. We can see the attacks on civilian infrastructure, including overnight, an attack that we correctly condemn for the brutality and illegality of targeting civilian infrastructure. We can see what happens when deterrence fails. That's why we're investing more in defence to increase our deterrence. We're doing so alongside our allies in order to prevent conflict in the future. This is a really important task. It's the first duty of the government. I want to see more defence spending because I don't want to see the United Kingdom in a war like our friends in Ukraine are fighting now. That's why we must continue to support our friends in Ukraine for as long as it takes and invest in the new kit and capabilities that our forces need to deter aggression. And that's what this Labour government will do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was asked at a Falklands War Veterans Conference in Poole last week to reassure our serving personnel that the funding is there for the deterrence we need to keep this nation safe. Now, this Labour government has already given our forces a pay rise, invested in defence housing, increased defence spending, and increased retention and recruitment in the army. Now, by contrast, because there's been a lot of groaning on the other side of the House, I want to give a specific. Between 2010 and 2024, the size of our army shrank by 30% under the last Conservative government. So can the Minister confirm there will be a fully funded plan to deliver this government's vision for defence? And can he give my constituents that reassurance that we will always keep this nation safe?
Can I thank my friend for her question? And can I also say thank you to all those people who served in the Falklands, both in the 1982 conflict, because yesterday was, I think, the 42nd anniversary of the Liberation Day, something that is celebrated not just across the United Kingdom, but also in the Falkland Islands. It's important that we remember the sacrifice of those people who went to the South Atlantic and never came back. And that's precisely, for me, one of the reasons why I want to see more defence investment, why I want to see us have the deterrent capability. Because coming from a military family, with members of my family that have served in across the forces, I know that when they go away, there's always a question mark about whether they will come home. And it is precisely because of that that drives me and my passion to say we need more defence spending, we need to spend it on kit and equipment that keeps our people safe, that provides deterrence and war-fighting capability. And that is exactly what this Labour government is doing, investing in our people, investing in our forces. Of course I want to see more defence spending. That's an argument that we're making and will continue to do so with the Defence Investment Plan published before the NATO summit.
Adega.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In response to the question from my right honourable friend, the former Defence Secretary, I welcome the Minister's response and his reaffirmation of the Government's commitment to all the recommendations in the Strategic Defence Review. Given that, at the current time, how many of those 62 recommendations have the funding they need fully agreed and committed by the Treasury?
Thank you. So we support all 62 recommendations of the SDR. They're all in progress currently. The Defence Investment Plan sets out how we will deliver our equipment, our personnel and our estates for the next 10 years. That will deliver that. I want to see more defence investment. The argument that was made by my former colleagues is one that is powerful. I do want to see more defence spending, and that is an argument that, if we're having that debate across the House, is one that I welcome.
Response.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answers. Can I also take this opportunity to welcome my honourable and gallant friend from Leighton and Wanstead to his rightful place on the front bench. His experience in the armed forces will be really useful for this government moving forward, and he also knows my constituency of Harlow very well, which is particularly useful. I'm sure you will all agree. As my honourable friend at the member for Bournemouth has stolen my thunder, I was going to say that actually our armed forces, the most important part of our armed forces are our people, our soldiers, our naval personnel, our sailors and also other staff. So can the Minister reassure me that he will continue to champion our armed forces and ensure they have all they need to do their jobs and keep us all safe?
Mr. Speaker, I can confirm that we will be continuing to invest in our people. I think it was the late 80s was the last time that we had a defence review that didn't cut the size of the British Army. In the Strategic Defence Review that was published under this Labour government, we announced that we will increase the size of the British Army to 76,000. We know that the Army strength fell considerably under the Conservatives. We know that we've seen a retention and recruitment crisis under the Conservatives for our forces. It is precisely that we've got after with the biggest pay rise for armed forces, action on housing and childcare, and I welcome my new colleagues, the new Minister for Veterans and People, but can I say I'm also really proud of the new Minister for the Armed Forces, another veteran serving in a key role, and both of them will do a good job for our nation.
In his excoriating resignation letter, the genuinely honourable and genuinely gallant member for Selly Oak made it very clear that he was leaving not just because he considered the DIP to be underfunded, but more particularly because it planned to spend the money on the wrong things, preparing to fight the last war, not the war to come. He was right, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Look, I have a lot of time for the former Defence Secretary and the former Armed Forces Minister. I agree with much of the argument that they have made around the importance of increasing defence spending. It's the reason why I've set out continuously from the dispatch box today that I want to see more defence spending and I want to see it directed at British companies. I want to see us prepare to deter the next conflict. And so to do that, we need to invest more in drones. That's what the Defence Investment Plan will set out. But as I've set out also to a question from a colleague on my side of the House, the Defence Investment Plan is a deliberately scalable document that can reflect an increasing defence budget. That's what we're projecting over the coming decade, delivering our commitment to 3.5% on core defence by 2035. Spending more on the new capabilities does mean, though, retiring old capabilities. It does mean doing something that the armed forces have not done for a very long time, and that means discarding some of that kit and equipment that's been around for many, many decades and investing in newer technologies. Now, that's a difficult argument for ministers to make. It's a difficult argument for those people that are attached to old equipment in particular. But when we have armour that's been in service since before the Vietnam War, where we have ships that are decades past their decommissioning date, we do need to be honest about the need to retire old equipment and buy new equipment. The hybrid Navy is just one example of what we'll be setting out in the Defence Investment Plan.
Sarah Poaching.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have been told from a reliable source that our Prime Minister, in stark contrast to all other previous modern-day Prime Ministers, has never visited our Special Forces headquarters in Hereford. Is this a reflection of how low down his priorities list defence is?
That's a cool question. I have to say, there's two things I would say to the honourable member. I know she's relatively new in this House, but the first thing I will say is we don't comment on Special Forces. It's a really important rule. We neither confirm nor deny activities nor visits to any Special Forces location. We do that deliberately because any question that helps define who is where, what they are doing, is a benefit to our adversaries. Now, I appreciate she's looking for a gotcha question with that, but let me take it back to the important things. We don't comment on Special Forces. What I have seen from our Prime Minister and the former Defence Secretary is them meeting the crews of our ballistic submarines when they return on zero day after many, many months under the sea. I've seen them support the brilliant service of armed forces personnel, but I'm afraid you will not get me nor any other government minister commenting on armed forces. And may I suggest to her that next time she thinks carefully about asking questions like that again.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was away with NATO PA last week and I thought I understood why the former Secretary of State for Defence had resigned. Standing here today, I think it's really unknown why he resigned, according to the Minister. But, Mr. Speaker, when the Minister is right, he's talking about making sure that naval procurement doesn't go through the problems that it had in the past, one of the consequences being in power with Liberal Democrats. But in terms of procuring ships, there are shipyards, Mr. Speaker, who are worried about whether they can maintain their workforces because without the dip, they don't know. And I am concerned to read that the Type 83 destroyer may be postponed as well. So may I ask the Minister, directly, yes or no, is all of the plans that are currently in place for capital ships going to remain, or is that up for debate as well?
Can I thank him for his question? And he will know from his time in the Ministry of Defence and on the NATO PA that getting procurement right and fixing a broken procurement system that we inherited is important. We've already made a number of steps to get there. He will recall, I think, from the last urgent question on this topic last week that I answered around the Type 83. And so if he wants to look back on that debate, he'll get his answer to that one there. But let me say to him very clearly, we inherited an equipment plan that was overcommitted and unsuitable to the challenges that we now face. That's one of the reasons why we're looking to invest more in autonomy, more in hybrid and uncrewed systems, and especially for the Royal Navy, as he mentions, the importance of air defence, looking at how uncrewed systems can sail alongside crewed systems, providing the air defence bubble, learning the lessons from our friends in Ukraine and recent activities in the Middle East and Cyprus will be an important part, and he'll be able to recognise that immediately when he reads the DIP when it's published.
Vicky Slade.
Mr. Speaker, Martin from Wimborne contacted me at the weekend to share his suggestion to fund the Defence Investment Plan. He thinks that the Lib Dem idea of issuing defence bonds is a really sensible one, and has told me that in his view there are many people with money in cash ISAs who might be tempted to invest if the investment was taken out of their inheritance tax liability. So will the Minister confirm whether discussions are happening about innovative ways to access the capital needed to ensure that the DIP can be fully funded? Minister.
Can I thank her for her question? And I think it was Martin, his interest in how we increase defence spending. She will know from the debates that we've had in this chamber that it's not just the defence investment plan that we're working on currently. We're also looking at how, through a defence finance and investment strategy, working with our defence advisory group for city professionals, that we can look at accessing new forms of capital, both patient, sovereign, and a whole range of capital options. I know that she and her party are keen on the war bonds option. I may say I'm happy looking at the detailed analysis if her party has any on it. But what I would also say is it's not just investing in core defence that we need investment in, it's investing in the supply chain in particular. And that's especially true of those small SMEs with huge growth potential as to how can we ensure that they can compete for contracts. So it's one of the reasons we're looking at new ways of procuring, the commercial procurement model, learning lessons from Task Force Kindred for Ukraine procurement. We're bringing those into mainstream UK Armed Forces procurement to speed it up, which means more SMEs will be able to benefit from it, but more capital injection into defence, both from the government, as we're planning, but also from private sources, is a good course.
No, Shastrihurst.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last week, the former Defence Secretary said that the Prime Minister was unable and the Chancellor was unwilling to fund the resources needed to tackle the threats facing our nation. Does the Minister agree with that assessment, and if not, why not?
Minister.
I've seen the Defence Secretary, the previous Defence Secretary, make the case for defence spending. I've seen the Prime Minister and the Chancellor increase defence spending since Labour came to office. I know that there is a very strong case that to meet the moment we need to further increase defence spending. That's why the new Defence Secretary has been speaking both to the Prime Minister and to cross-government colleagues about how best we can deliver that and deliver a DIP that will increase our warfighting capability, end the hollowing out and the absence of funding in the equipment plan. About 30% of the equipment plan we inherited was unfunded from the Conservatives. Lots of work to do, but we publish it before the NATO summit.
Tim Farron.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the sluggish and unambitious delivery of the Defence Investment Plan is not the only threat to our security. Given that we have Russian ships threatening our cables and such like, would he agree with me that the fact that the United Kingdom is reliant for its food supply, 45% of it, on imports, that is no longer an economic convenience, it is a national security liability? And will he recognise that England is now the only country in the UK and the only country in Europe that doesn't directly support its farmers to produce food? Isn't that a threat to our national security too?
Yeah.
Minister.
Well, when I held the Shadow Environment brief, he and I were in many debates where I made the case strongly that food security is national security. It's something that really matters. But he will also know about, he mentions cables as well, that we're investing in not only the operations that RFA Proteus, but also HMS Stirling Castle can undertake to support our undersea infrastructure. We need to continue to support those items, and he will see more in the Defence Investment Plan. DEFRA issues cover food security here, but I do agree with him that food security is national security.
Dr. Kieran Mullen.
Madam Deputy Speaker, Madam Speaker, the former Defence Secretary knows what's in the Defence Investment Plan, thought it was inadequate and resigned as a result. I'm sure the Minister wouldn't be so shameless and disrespectful to this House to spend an hour defending that plan if he himself hasn't seen it in full. So a very easy question for the Minister, yes or no, has he seen the Defence Investment Plan in full?
Minister.
Yes, I've been involved with doing it. Let me be very clear. To answer his question in full, I know his front bench want to shout at me, but let them listen just for a moment. The Defence Investment Plan is a good, scalable plan that provides the capabilities. He's asking me have I seen it. I've just replied yes. He needs to listen to the answer. Yes, I have seen it. I've been involved with writing it. The plan itself is a good plan. The debate here is about the funding that goes into it. And I'm up for a debate that says, how do we increase defence spending? Because I want to see more capabilities. I want to see defence housing improve faster. I want to see more support and recovery of the strength of our armed forces. That's precisely what the Defence Investment Plan will set out. And making the case for more funding to go into that is a good one.
Ayub Khan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. If there's anything the last few months has taught us, it's that military might is no guarantee of security. Trump deployed the full force of its military, dropping bombs and killing thousands in Iran. And it's brought nothing but mounting debt and a far worse deal than the one Obama struck without firing a single missile. In addition, Trump and Netanyahu wiped more than $2 trillion from the global economy and brought energy price hikes thought to have pushed 100,000 Brits out of work. Now, of course, that does not mean we abrogate our responsibilities and don't support our armed forces in personnel and the deterrence that we need. But unlike the opposition leader, does the Minister agree that careful diplomacy and tackling the cost of living crisis, especially for the most vulnerable, does more to bring security than any bomb?
Try and keep it short, Minister.
Yep. Can I recommend to the honourable gentleman that he reads the new defence diplomacy strategy that we published a few months ago to deliver on what he's just asked me?
Rebecca.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Members of 4-2 Commando Royal Marines, led by Commanding Officer Tom Quinn, were a key part of the seizure of the Russian Shadow Fleet vessel yesterday morning. Now, it's clear that our Royal Marines will always deliver for this country. They are world class, and I've had the privilege of seeing them in action at their home in Bickley Barracks in my constituency. But their ability to succeed can only be sustained if we invest in our defence and prepare for the wars of tomorrow. The former Armed Forces Minister, a former Royal Marine himself, said in his resignation letter, "We're still purchasing capability suitable for the last war, whilst our adversaries arm for the next one." Does the Minister agree?
Can I thank her? As a fellow Plymouth MP, I was exceedingly proud of the Royal Marines from 4-2 Commando in Plymouth for participating in the action. If you were to look at 4-7 Commando, another Royal Marines unit based in Plymouth, she will be able to see some of the new capabilities that we've bought to support them. The Kraken K3 Scouts, for instance, will continue giving our Royal Marines the capabilities that they have, because the Royal Marines have a bright future ahead of them and superb professionalism, as we've seen from the weekend.
Robin Swan.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister said that the Defence Investment Plan will be published following a line-by-line review. It's obvious that the previous Secretary of State resigned because he could no longer review it downwards any further because of the actions of the Treasury. He's also said it's scalable. What assurances can the Minister give that it's scalable upwards in regards to spend and not downwards, as the Treasury has already said that they're unable and unwilling to fund it further?
So we're already increasing defence spending. We will continue to increase defence spending. The Defence Investment Plan is designed to be scalable to match that increased defence spending. The question is what profile that increase should have. I'm always going to be arguing for more defence spending, but we're increasing defence spending, and that's something that I want to see more of.
Kevin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And the Business Secretary on the weekend said a lot of time and effort had gone into the Defence Investment Plan, but when pushed, he hadn't read it. The Defence Secretary and his colleague have read it and they resigned. Now, he said he'd read it in full. Why did he decide not to resign when his two colleagues in the department did resign?
Minister.
I answered that question in my early remarks.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I first of all put on record my thanks to the former Secretary of State and the Forces Minister for their principled stand in relation to defence spending. Over the weekend, one of the government ministers on the Laura Kuenssberg show referred to extra defence funding. The Minister, the new Secretary of State, which I welcome to his place, I wish him well, like honourable and gallant member that he is. He also, I understand, is committed to extra funding. So as a DUP MP representing a region with a proud historic military tradition and a thriving defence sector manufacturing base, what immediate assurances can the Minister give to the thousands of skilled defence, aerospace and maritime workers across Northern Ireland whose cutting-edge capabilities are vital to reinforcing our sovereign defence industrial base, and we must never compromise the territorial integrity of the
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would point the honourable gentleman to not just the £1.6 billion contract that we've placed with Thales in Belfast for their LMM missile supporting our friends in Ukraine, but the increasing investment that we're working with Thales on to support our Middle Eastern friends, and the £50 million Northern Ireland Defence Growth Deal that's especially supporting the SMEs in Northern Ireland to be able to access more of that increasing defence spending. But I want to see more defence spending in Northern Ireland, as I want to see more defence spending across the United Kingdom.
The Minister will know that we've been stalling on signing the full international contract for GCAP now since last year. And in April, we signed the interim funding contract for Edgewing, which was £686 million. That runs out in just 2 weeks' time. Now, yesterday, the Prime Minister obviously met with Sanai Takaichi, the Japanese Prime Minister, and Japan being one of the partners in GCAP. Can he confirm that there's an agreement that he has signed the full international contract, and can he guarantee that funding will be in place before the money runs out at the end of June?
Minister.
It's unusual for him not to be on the money in terms of the questions, but as the media reports from from the weekend's meeting make clear, we'll be signing the full international contract by the end of the month. We're committed to GCAP.
Final question, Mike Wood.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister was clear that the previous Defence Secretary asked him to remain in post. So will he be equally clear and tell us exactly what, in the letter sent by the previous Defence Secretary to the Prime Minister about the Defence Investment Plan last Thursday, he disagrees with?
Minister.
There's lots that I agree with the former Defence Secretary, and there's lots that he and I have worked together for a very long time on this. I respect his decision and those of the former Armed Forces Minister. I'm staying to get this done, to deliver a Defence Investment Plan, and that's why I'm going to continue working with our brand new Defence Secretary to get a good deal for defence and to make sure that we are supporting our armed forces.
That is the end of the question on the Defence Investment Plan. I'll give the front benches a moment or two to shuffle over. I ask colleagues to be seated. Before we come to the statement, I must place on record Mr. Speaker's disappointment that the Prime Minister has chosen Downing Street over this House to make the important announcement about banning under-16s from social media. The Prime Minister's very own rulebook states that important policy announcements should be made in the first instance in this House when it is sitting. His approach this morning is symptomatic of a pattern of disrespect for this House from number 10. The government said it will update the ministerial code on this point, and I urge them to get on with it. In the meantime, they must stick with the rules as they are set out. Mr. Speaker wishes to thank the Secretary of State, who is a shining example of a minister taking the code seriously on this matter and not briefing out her statement before she has come to the House. Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Today marks a defining moment for our children and future generations as we lay the foundations for a new settlement for the online world to ensure children have the best start in life, to give them freedom to be children again, and so we put power back into parents' hands. Up and down the country, parents are grappling with social media. What their children are seeing, how much screen time they should have, who they are communicating with, and if they are safe. Many children love connecting and interacting on social media, but others struggle with their mental health, concentration, and self-esteem. And the police, children's charities, and far too many tragically bereaved pet families have seen for themselves the serious risks and harm social media brings. While these concerns are widely shared, there are different, often strongly held views about the best way forward. That is why we launched our consultation on growing up in the online world to make sure everyone's voices were heard. The response has been overwhelming. We've had over 116,000 replies, including 54,000 from parents and 14,000 from children. We've heard from charities, teachers' organisations, the police and medical professionals, and from countless members of Parliament too. Not only the Science and Technology and Education Select Committees, but individual members, including the honourable members for Plymouth Moor View, Croydon East, Cowdenbeath and Kilcoldy, Dunfermline and Dollar, and so many more besides. The progress report we published today sets out lots of different perspectives, but overwhelmingly our consultation shows parents and children are concerned about what they're being exposed to online. Harmful content content that's completely inappropriate for their age, abuse and exploitation. They're worried about the impact on sleep, school, children's physical health, and their emotional well-being too. Above all, parents are crying out for change. 9 out of 10 parents who responded to the consultation told us they want an outright ban on social media, as did 3/4 in our large-scale representative survey, and 113,000 parents who signed Daisy and Joe's smartphone-free childhood petition. Keeping children safe online has been my top priority since day one in this job. I've listened to calls, especially from bereaved families, that we need to act as quickly as possible. So today I can announce our first steps, with more to come next month. And I can confirm we will ban social media companies providing their services to under 16s. To give greater protection.
Order. Was there clapping in the chamber? There should not be clapping in the chamber or in the gallery. No doubt the doorkeepers will remove people if they need to. Minister.
And we are doing this to give greater protections to children, greater clarity for parents and carers, and to set a new social norm for future generations. My intention is to lay regulations on a ban and have a vote on it by the end of this year, with the ban coming into effect early 2027. We plan to use the same model as Australia, covering user-to-user platforms that allow users to post material alongside algorithms. So our ban will include platforms like Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and X. Because we want to make sure we don't include educational services, e-commerce platforms, or music streaming, there will be a narrowly defined list of exemptions, which we will, of course, keep under review. Madam Deputy Speaker, I have also listened to parents, to civil society, and to many MPs in this House, including the members for Putney, Lowestoft, Congleton, and Newcastle upon Tyne, about the need to go further. So I can today announce our first steps in restricting a wider range of features and functions that create risks for young people. Because it can open the door to vile child abuse, we will ban live streaming for under 16s across all platforms. And we will ban communication with strangers, including in gaming, to stop paedophiles meeting and grooming children. And Madam Deputy Speaker, we are not stopping there. AI chatbots were a top concern of parents who responded to our consultation, particularly those that mimic intimate relationships and exploit vulnerabilities. The Children's Commissioner and my honourable friends, the members for Aylesbury and Milton Keynes Central, have also raised this issue. So today, Britain is becoming the first country in the world to ban chatbots that offer sexualised content to under 18s. And we will restrict this functionality on general-purpose chatbots too. We know there are also really serious concerns about other AI chatbots like therapy apps. But I recognise that some of these may have benefits, so I am working closely with the Department of Health and others to assess the evidence, and I will come back to the House on this issue and wider measures on AI chatbots in a further statement next month. Madam Deputy Speaker, we also want to address concerns about a cliff edge when you turn 16, an age when many young people should be especially focused on their futures and on exams. So I can today announce live streaming and stranger communication, including in gaming, will be switched off by default for 16 and 17-year-olds. I am also strongly minded to bring in default overnight curfews and breaks in infinite scrolling for 16 and 17-year-olds. And I will set out further details once our pilot schemes are finished in my statement next July, in July. Madam Deputy Speaker, I know that not everybody supports a ban, and I have listened really carefully to those concerns, and I want to take each in turn. First, we've seen in Australia that many children will try and succeed in getting around a ban. I think that is inevitable when social media has been such an integral part of their lives. So we will introduce more highly effective age assurance measures to better support compliance, and I have asked Ofcom to share proposals on this within months. However, I want to be clear to parents and to members of this House that our ban is as much about helping future generations and resetting social norms in future as it is about young people today. Second, people worry that a ban would push children onto riskier, less regulated sites, and this is something I really take extremely seriously. So I have had a long conversation with and written to Ofcom and the new chair to stress once again that enforcement of both the Online Safety Act and our new ban must be a top priority. That they must focus rigorously on this, including riskier sites, and to ask them for an urgent review of whether Ofcom has the right capabilities in place. I have also asked them to publish a clear enforcement strategy and an annual report to Parliament on how this strategy is progressing. Third, we must prepare children for the online world, which will inevitably be part of their lives. Now, many schools are already doing this, but from September this year, every pupil across England will learn about social media in the classroom, including about AI